Chapter 33. Yi Xian carried his sister back to the mansion. As soon as they arrived, Yi Ling fell asleep. After placing Yi Ling on the bed, Yi Ling had curled up into a ball and was trembling uncontrollably. Yi Xian was shocked. He quickly licked Yi Ling's blanket, but Yi Ling was still cold. Seeing this, Yi Xian panicked. As if thinking of something, he quickly took out the Heaven Fire Warm Jade hanging on Yi Ling's neck. When he saw the Heaven Fire Warm Jade, he was stunned. There was a faint layer of frost on the surface of the Heaven Fire Warm Jade. "Senior?" Yi Xian shouted in his heart. "Senior, bring the jade in." The mysterious woman's voice suddenly rang out. Yi Xian quickly brought the Heaven Fire Warm Jade into the prison pagoda. After a while, the Heaven Fire Warm Jade appeared in Yi Xian's hand again. At this time, the Heaven Fire Warm Jade had returned to its original appearance. Yi Xian quickly hung the Heaven Fire Warm Jade on Yi Ling's neck. Gradually, Yi Ling's complexion improved. Seeing this, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly rang out. 99% of the jade's spiritual power and source have disappeared. It will last for about a day at most. After that, it will become a useless stone. You should plan ahead. Useless stone. Yi Xian's expression gradually turned serious. If the Heaven Fire Warm Jade lost its effect, how could his sister withstand the cold qi? After a while, Yi Xian left the room. Outside the door, looking at the bright moon in the night sky, Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Tomorrow was the day of recruitment for Kuraki College. Kuraki College. This was the largest college in Jiang country. Once he joined Kuraki College, he could seek medical treatment for his sister. And his sister would not have to suffer from the pain of her illness. At this moment, Lu Xiaoran arrived at the courtyard. Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. "Little friend Yi, I'm sorry about tonight." Yi Xian shook his head. "This has nothing to do with Senior Lu." Lu Xiaoran said softly, "I was more optimistic about the first prince, but today's matter made me realize that he isn't what I thought he was. These descendants of the imperial family really know how to put on a show." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Senior Lu, forgive me for being frank, but isn't it too early for you to choose a side now? Moreover, I'm afraid that person above us isn't willing to see you choose a side now." Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. "Of course I know. However, if I don't choose a side now, I'm afraid it will be too late in the future." Yi Xian shook his head. "With all due respect, Senior Lu only needs to pledge loyalty to His Majesty. As long as His Majesty doesn't die, nothing will happen to Senior Lu and the Lu family." Lu Xiaoran nodded. "I'm thinking the same thing. Our Lu family doesn't want to be involved in the battle for the crown prince position." Yi Xian nodded and didn't say anything else. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "Young brother, Kuraki Academy is recruiting students tomorrow. At that time, I'll have to rely on you to take good care of my disappointing son." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior Lu, I might not even be able to join Kuraki Academy." Lu Xiaoran shook his head lightly. "If Kuraki Academy doesn't accept you, then it'll be their greatest loss." Yi Xian smiled and remained silent. After Lu Xiaoran left, Yi Xian returned to the pagoda. He just returned to the pagoda when he heard something ringing from above. It was very soft, but he definitely heard it. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Senior, what was that?" She said, "What do you think it should be?" Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Senior, exactly what sort of existence is in the second level?" After a short moment of silence, she said, "It's not a good person. In short, you have to find a way to obtain a spirit sword to improve your cultivation once you enter the academy. Everything has to be sped up." Yi Xian nodded. The current pagoda made it difficult for him to feel at ease. Or it should be said that he was perturbed at all times. Because he himself felt that the existence in the second level was not a good person. There was no proof, it was just a feeling, and this feeling was given to him by the pagoda. It should be said that it was a warning from the pagoda. Just as the mysterious woman said, he had to speed up. Of course, his top priority now was to join Kuraki Academy. A day passed. Early in the morning, a red sun slowly rose from the horizon. Yi Xian pulled his sister Yi Ling out of the mansion's entrance. Outside the entrance was Lu Xiaoran and little fatty Lu Ming. Lu Xiaoran sized up Yi Xian. Yi Xian had changed into a cloud-white robe today. His looks were extremely good to begin with, and with a bit of dressing up, he could indeed be called a handsome man. If he wore a sword at his waist and revealed his identity as a swordsman, he would probably be able to charm many young girls in the imperial city. As for Yi Ling, she had also changed into a dark green skirt, and there was a long braid behind her head. Although she was young, anyone could see that she was a beauty in the making. In a few years she would definitely be a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. After seeing the appearance of the brother and sister, Lu Xiaoran was even more certain that this pair of brother and sister's origins were definitely not simple. Retracting his thoughts, Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "Little friend Yi, let's go." Yi Xian nodded, then pulled Yi Ling and followed Lu Xiaoran and his father into the distance. They were not far from Karaki Academy, so the few of them chose to walk. Today the Imperial City could be said to be unusually lively. Karaki Academy's recruitment could be said to be the most important event in the Imperial City. In the entire Jiang country, the best way to stand out was to enter Karaki Academy. Entering Karaki Academy could be said to be like a carp leaping through the Dragon's Gate. Therefore, every time Karaki Academy recruited students, geniuses from all over the Jiang country would rush over. When these geniuses came, their families would naturally accompany them. Therefore the Imperial City was bustling. In fact, what Yi Xian did not know about Dao Yi was that without Lu Xiaoran, he and his sister would not even be able to find a place to stay in the Imperial City. This was because the inns in the Imperial City had basically been booked a month ago. Today Yiling was unusually happy because Yi Xian would be joining Karaki Academy today. Once Yi Xian joined Karaki Academy, Yi Xian would no longer be alone. He would have someone to rely on and he would also have a good future. At that time, even if her illness could not be cured, she could be at ease. Thinking up to this point, Yi Ling tilted her head and glanced at Yi Xian. She held Yi Xian's hand tightly. If it was possible, she also wanted to live because her brother had been living too tirelessly ever since their mother left them. She was not afraid of death, but she was afraid that her brother would be lonely after she died. More and more people gathered on the streets, and all of them were heading in the same direction. Karaki Academy. In the north of the Imperial City, there was a huge mountain called Song Mountain. It was nearly 3,000 meters tall, and one could overlook the entire Imperial City from the waist of the mountain. And on this Song Mountain was Karaki Academy. On the way, Lu Xiaoran said with a smile, "Karaki Academy has a long history. In this part of the world, the dynasties have changed countless times, but Karaki Academy has always existed. Like the Drunken Immortal restaurant, they are two true giants." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Are there also Karaki Academies in other countries?" Lu Xiaoran nodded, "Of course there are. It is said that the headquarters of Karaki Academy is located in the central continent, but that is a very far place." Saying that, he shook his head with a smile and then looked at Yi Xian. "Little friend Yi, if you have the opportunity in the future, you should leave the country of Jiang, leave the Qing province and see the wider world outside. Only then will you not have come to this world in vain." Yi Xian said with a smile, "It's too far away. The most important thing is to take care of the present." Lu Xiaoran laughed, "Of course." Soon the group arrived at the foot of Tsang Mountain. Standing at the foot of Tsang Mountain and looking up, a feeling of insignificance involuntarily arose in their hearts. At this time, there was a sea of people at the foot of Tsang Mountain. Obviously, these people had come to participate in the recruitment of Karaki Academy. And Yi Xian was also a little surprised because these people before him were at least in the qi-controlling realm, and they were all very young. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, Lu Xiaoran said with a smile, "Don't be surprised, all the geniuses of the country of Jiang are here. Think about it, out of a population of tens of millions, only these geniuses are here. Are there many?" Yi Xian nodded. In Qingqing, an 18-year-old in the qi-controlling realm was definitely a super genius. However, Qingqing was only a small city. If placed in some big cities, they might only be considered ordinary geniuses. And if placed in the whole country of Jiang, they might only be considered ordinary. At this time, an immortal crane flew down from the sky, and on the back of the crane sat an old man. Soon, the immortal crane arrived above the crowd, and the old man looked down. This old man is the outer dean of Karaki Academy, Song Li, and he is in charge of today's recruitment. Today's recruitment is limited to 20 people, and there will be a total of 3 rounds. If there are more than 20 people who pass the 3 rounds, then these 20 people will compete with each other and the winner will stay. 20. The crowd was in an uproar when they heard this voice. There were at least 1,000 people here, and only 20 meant that 99% of them would be eliminated. Yi Xian's expression turned serious as well. Only 20 meant that the competition would be extremely brutal. The old man's voice resounded once more in the sky. The first round is to ascend the mountain. Those who are unable to ascend the mountain on foot will be eliminated immediately. Ascend the mountain? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he looked at Lu Xiaoran. It's that simple? Lu Xiaoran shook his head. That's not simple. This ascent is suppressed by a formation, and the objective of this round is to eliminate those with unstable realms. Even though most people have attained the qi-controlling realm, many of them are not at that realm. Yi Xian nodded and then he looked at Lu Ming. Senior, little Ming doesn't seem to have attained the qi-controlling realm. Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. Of course he hasn't, and he's only entering Kuraki Academy as a special student. Special student? Yi Xian was puzzled. What do you mean? Lu Xiaoran looked embarrassed. Actually, it's just a degree bought with money, but it's not an official student. It's just a low-level class. There will be teachers in this class, but they're much worse than official students. Moreover, they don't have the status of an official student. Beside him, Lu Ming was a little dissatisfied. Big brother, Dad, at least leave me some face. Hearing this, Lu Xiaoran was infuriated and said angrily, "Face my ass. If you had worked hard, would your father have begged someone to get you a degree?" Lu Ming curled his lips, not daring to talk back. Yi Xian and his sister looked at each other and smiled. At this moment, Lu Xiaoran suddenly said, "Little friend Yi, let's go to the starting point." Yi Xian nodded. Just like that, the group arrived at a Xiaodao at the foot of Tsang Mountain. Beside the Xiaodao there was a wooden stake, and on the wooden stake, there was a man who had been dead for God knows how long. At the scene, everyone pointed at the man and discussed animatedly. Yi Xian glanced at the man, then turned to look at Lu Xiaoran. "Senior, this is?" Lu Xiaoran said in a deep voice, "A student of Blue Waves Academy." Blue Waves Academy. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, "Is he also from our imperial capital?" Lu Xiaoran nodded. "It's normal that you haven't heard of it. Now, in the country of Jiang, everyone knows of Kuraki Academy, but very few people know of Blue Waves Academy. In fact, in the previous dynasty, Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy were equally famous, but for some unknown reason, these two academies became mortal enemies. Every 3 years, there would be a life and death competition between them. Later, for some unknown reason, the strength of Blue Waves Academy gradually weakened, while Kuraki Academy became stronger and stronger, so, for the last 50 years, Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy were almost completely defeated in the life and death competition, and those students who represented Blue Waves Academy to participate in the life and death competition were nailed to this Xiaodao. If you go up from here, you will encounter many corpses." After speaking, he shook his head and sighed. According to the agreement between both sides, if Blue Waves Academy can win once, they can take away the corpses of these students. Unfortunately, until now, no one from Blue Waves Academy has been able to defeat the students of Kuraki Academy. Chapter 34. Blue Waves Academy. Yi Xian looked at the corpse of the man in front of him, and his heart was filled with emotions. In Qingqing, the aristocratic families used extremely cruel methods to fight for their own interests. But he did not expect that in the imperial capital, the fights between the major forces were even more cruel, and they did not show any mercy. At this time, Lu Xiaoran suddenly pointed at a round platform not far away from Xiaodao. "Little friend, do you know what this is?" Yi Xian turned his head and looked at the round platform not far away. The round platform was more than 40 zhang wide, and on the round platform, there were 9 wooden people holding wooden swords. The 9 wooden people stood side by side in a neat row. "This is?" Yi Xian was somewhat curious and asked. Lu Xiaoran said in Xiaodao, "This is the famous 9-palace formation of Kuraki Academy. It is said that this formation was created by the founder of Kuraki Academy. In this 100 countries of Qingzhou, all Kuraki Academy has this formation. And the purpose of this formation is said to be a test, a special test. As long as one can break this formation before the age of 20, the dean of Kuraki Academy must accept this person as his direct disciple, which is equivalent to the disciple of the dean." After saying that, he shook his head and smiled. "Unfortunately, this formation has not been broken for nearly 50 years already." 9-palace formation. Yi Xian sized up the 9 wooden people. "Is this formation very powerful?" Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. "It is not just powerful. Once, there was a higher sky realm powerhouse who wanted to try it, but unfortunately, that person was directly killed in less than 10 breaths. And those who can reach higher sky realm before the age of 20, that is very few." Speaking until here, he slightly paused, then said again, "It is said that Kuraki Academy invited Nguesher to break this formation, but whether she actually came or not, no one knows." Just when Yi Xian was about to say something at this time, an old voice suddenly resounded from the sky. "The test begins." Along with this voice, the people gathered in front of Xiaodao all rushed out. Yi Xian turned his head and stroked Yi Ling's small head, then he looked at Lu Xiaoran. "Senior Lu, Please look after my sister. Lu Xiaoran smiled. Of course. Yi Ling gave Yi Xian a gentle hug. Brother, you can do it. Yi Xian chuckled, then turned around and joined the crowd. Looking at Yi Xian disappearing into the crowd, Yi Ling smiled. But very quickly her body trembled. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Cold air overflowed from her body, making her look like a block of ice. Lu Xiaoran was shocked when he saw this scene, and he hurriedly said, Come, let's go back first. Yi Ling shook his head. Uncle Lu, it's fine. As she spoke, she took out the heaven fire warm jade. With this I'll be fine. Lu Xiaoran still wanted to say something, but Yi Ling raised her head and looked into the distance. She said softly, Only when I see Big Brother joining Karaki Academy can I feel at ease. Lu Xiaoran sighed softly. He patted Lu Ming lightly and said, Go get Sister Ling 2 long furs. Be quick. Little fatty Lu Ming hurriedly nodded, then turned around and ran. In the distance, Yi Xian had already disappeared into the crowd. Like everyone else, Yi Xian was quite excited. Because Karaki Academy was right in front of him. Once he joined Karaki Academy, there would be hope for his sister's illness. In the crowd, Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the waist of the mountain. He took a deep breath and said, Let's do it. For my sister and for myself. After saying that, he quickened his pace. In the beginning the crowd was very fast. But after walking for around 5 kilometers, almost 90% of them slowed down. Moreover, they were getting slower and slower. This was because as they walked, an invisible pressure suddenly appeared on their bodies. With every step they took, this pressure would increase by a bit. Therefore, after the people at the front had walked for around 10 kilometers, some people behind them were gradually being eliminated. However, the speed of the people at the front was still very fast. Obviously, there were people who were very weak, but there were also people who were very strong. Yi Xian walked at a moderate pace. As for the invisible pressure, it didn't affect him at all. Because his bones and flesh were now so strong that even a levitation realm cultivator might not be able to compete with him. Hidden realm. At this time, the advantage and strength of his hidden realm could be seen. Time passed by slowly. The higher they walked, the fewer people there were. After 2 hours, there were less than 100 people who were still walking. And most of them were walking with great difficulty. However, there were still a few who stood out. One of them was a man in embroidered robes. This person had taken the lead from the beginning and had left the people behind him a distance of nearly 10 meters. At the beginning, everyone thought that he would slow down. However, what they didn't expect was that even until now, this person's speed was still extremely fast. Not far behind the man in embroidered robes was a man in a luxurious robe and a man with a long knife at his waist. The 2 men were nearly 10 meters away from the man in embroidered robes. Both of them stared at the man in embroidered robes in the distance. Although their speed was slightly slower than before, it was still steady and they didn't feel tired. And behind these 2 men there were less than 100 people left. Most of them were exhausted and walking with great difficulty. As for Yi Xian, he was still walking at a moderate pace. The pressure really didn't affect him at all. Even after walking for a while, the pressure on his body didn't grow stronger. Instead, he didn't feel any pressure at all. As for why he didn't walk quickly, he actually didn't think about this question. He was simply walking. To him, it didn't matter if he walked fast or slow as long as he walked to the end. In other words, he didn't purposely walk. He could walk however he wanted. Half an hour later, there were less than 40 people still walking on Xiaodao. However, at this moment, the man in embroidered robes who was the leader had already walked to the end, followed by the man in luxurious robe and the man with a long knife. And when he was about to reach the end, he suddenly stopped and turned his head to look at a wooden stake beside Xiaodao. A man was nailed to the wooden stake. From his appearance, he seemed to be approximately 20 years old. This man was quite miserable. He didn't have both hands and feet. He didn't even have eyeballs. There were only 2 empty black holes in his eyes. Needless to say, he should also be a student of Blue Waves Academy. Moreover, from the corpse, he might have died not long ago. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. Needless to say, Blue Waves Academy and Karaki Academy should have a blood feud. Without stopping, Yi Xian quickly walked to the end. After all 42 people reached the end, a red-crowned crane flew above everyone's head. On the red-crowned crane, Song Zhong looked down at everyone. Finally, his gaze fell on Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, his gaze became quite ice-cold. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned because he could already feel the hostility of the other party. Merely he didn't understand. He didn't have any grudges with the other party. In fact, they hadn't even met before, so why did the other party have a grudge against him? You come out. On the back of the red-crowned crane, Song Zhong looked down at Yi Xian. His voice was ice-cold and didn't contain a trace of emotion. Yi Xian glanced at Song Zhong and walked out of the crowd. Song Zhong looked down at Yi Xian and said, "My Karaki Academy's minimum requirement is to reach Qi-controlling realm before the age of 18. And you haven't reached Qi-controlling realm, right? Haven't reached Qi-controlling realm." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Very quickly, everyone looked at Yi Xian. After all, Karaki Academy's minimum requirement was to reach Qi-controlling realm before the age of 18. But Yi Xian hadn't reached Qi-controlling realm. To be more serious, he was lying. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Elder Tsang, even though I haven't reached Qi-controlling realm, I have passed the first test." "So what?" On the back of the red-crowned crane, Song Zhong said coldly, "My Karaki Academy's rule states that those who haven't reached Qi-controlling realm before the age of 18 cannot participate in the test. Even if you pass the first test, it's meaningless. Therefore, I declare that you don't have the right to participate in the test. According to the rules, you should be punished with 100 beatings and immediately kicked off Tsang Mountain." As soon as Song Zhong's voice fell, 2 levitation realm experts arrived before Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked straight at Song Zhong. "Elder Tsang, you and I have never met before. But this is the first time we have met, yet you are targeting me. I have offended you before." He wasn't stupid, he naturally knew that the elder in front of him was targeting him. Song Zhong's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Targeting you? If you knew it would be like this, why did you do it in the first place?" "Song Zhong." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly recalled something. At the banquet last night he had beaten up a man, and that man was called Song Qi. At this moment, after taking a closer look, he discovered that this elder Song Zhong had a stamped badge on his chest. Song Qi also had the same badge on his chest that day. This kind of badge was usually a family badge, and it was also a symbol of status. Without a doubt, this person in front of him was Song Qi's elder. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, a man suddenly stood up. "Yi Xian, you really are stupid." Yi Xian turned his head to look at the man. He looked quite familiar. It didn't take long for Chen Shi to remember. It was the man who'd stood up for Mo Suiqing at the banquet that day, and he was called Li Feng. Li Feng laughed coldly. "Do you think you can look down on everyone just because you have the protection of Engusher? Today I'll allow you to witness the strength of all of us." As he spoke, he bowed slightly to Tsang Zhong, who stood in midair. "Elder Tsang, this person hasn't attained the Qi-controlling realm, yet he intends to participate in the exam this time. His actions are clearly disrespecting Karaki Academy, and for the sake of the Academy's dignity, I hope Elder Tsang can punish him severely." As soon as Li Feng finished speaking, another 8 men by Yi Xian's side stood forward, and then they bowed deeply and spoke in unison. "Elder Tsang Zhong, please punish him severely." Song Zhong laughed coldly. "Right, the old man actually forgot about this. Drag him away and beat him to death as a warning to others." Those 2 Void Realm experts were about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly withdrew a jade pendant, and he looked Song Zhong in the eyes and said, "This is Engusher's jade pendant. I was recommended to Karaki Academy by her." Everyone present was shocked when they heard this. Engusher's recommendation. That's a huge amount. Even the man in embroidered clothes who'd taken the lead couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian with slight curiosity in his eyes. Engusher was the idol of everyone in the state of Zhang's younger generation. In midair, Song Zhong's expression was extremely unsightly. He hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually possess Enlanxio's jade pendant. "I have to give face to Engusher." Li Feng became anxious when he saw Song Zhong remain silent, and he didn't even think before pointing at Yi Xian angrily. "How dare you? You're just a piece of trash at the Qi transformation realm. How could you possibly be recommended by Engusher? This jade pendant is definitely fake. You." Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and when he reappeared he was already in front of Li Feng. Under everyone's gazes, Yi Xian directly slapped Li Feng's face. Mother asterisk cur? Slap. Li Feng was sent flying by this slap. Everyone was stunned. P.S. Thank you for the donations and monthly votes from my friends yesterday. I saw it and remembered it all. I'm truly grateful. Chapter 35. Hit someone? Hit someone here? Everyone was stunned. Li Feng, who was hit by Yi Xian, was stunned as well. Because he really hadn't expected that Yi Xian would attack him. After all, this was Karaki Academy and Song Zhong was here. Even Song Zhong was slightly stunned because he hadn't expected that someone would dare to hit someone in front of him. Moreover, it was done in such a brazen manner. Meanwhile, Li Feng crawled up from the ground and he pointed angrily at Yi Xian and said fiercely, "You're actually so arrogant." You. Before he could finish speaking, Yi Xian, who was not far away from him, suddenly approached him. Then, before he could come to his senses, Yi Xian slapped him in the face again. Slap. Along with a resounding slap, Li Feng's entire body was directly slapped away. Some of the students couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian with shock when they witnessed this scene. Li Feng was at the chi-controlling realm, but he actually couldn't fight back at all. If the first time Li Feng was hit was because of Yi Xian's sneak attack, then the second time wasn't a sneak attack, but a fair slap. Even then Li Feng still couldn't fight back at all. His strength was suppressed. Presumptuous. At this moment, Song Zhong, who was sitting on the back of the red-crowned crane, suddenly shouted angrily. In an instant, an invisible pressure enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian raised his head and looked Song Zhong in the eyes. "Elder Song, it's not good to use public interest for personal gain, right?" Song Zhong sneered, "Using public interest for personal gain? When did I use public interest for personal gain? My Kuraki Academy's recruitment standards are very clear. Those who haven't attained the chi-controlling realm aren't allowed to enter my academy. You're only at the transformation realm, so what wrong did the old man do to disqualify you?" As he said this, his eyes gradually turned cold. "And you publicly hit someone in my Kuraki Academy. You're looking down on my Kuraki Academy. And Guesher is my Kuraki Academy's honorary instructor. The old man believes that even if she were here, she wouldn't allow you to enter Kuraki Academy." At this moment, Li Feng suddenly crawled to his feet. He glared at Yi Xian, who was not far away. His face was filled with savagery and madness. "You lowly bastard, you actually—" Before he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. Li Xiu's expression changed drastically. But this time he was clearly prepared. When Yi Xian appeared in front of him, he suddenly threw a punch at Yi Xian. As he punched out, a powerful airflow wrapped around his fist like a mist. Quite powerful. Yi Xian also punched out. The two fists collided. Gotcha. Along with the sound of bones breaking, Li Feng was blasted over 10 m away. As soon as he fell to the ground, he started howling madly. The bones in his entire right arm had been completely shattered. Yi Xian glanced coldly at Li Feng, who was howling incessantly. "I'll fucking beat you to death if you say another word." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his head to look at Song Zhong. The latter's expression was icy cold, and his eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. "You acted violently in front of the old man today, and you completely disregard Kuraki Academy. Even in Guesher can't protect you. Guards, take him away and kill him on the spot." As soon as he finished speaking, two experts at the side were about to attack. Yi Xian looked Song Zhong in the eyes. "Even though I haven't attained the Qi Resistance Realm, Elder Tsang has noticed that I possess the strength of a Qi Resistance Realm expert." Song Zhong ridiculed. "Who cares if you possess the strength of a Qi Resistance Realm expert? The old man only knows that you haven't attained the Qi Resistance Realm. Since you haven't attained the Qi Resistance Realm, then you aren't qualified to participate in my Kuraki Academy's recruitment test." As he spoke, he lightly waved his right hand. "Take him down and kill him on the spot." When they heard Song Zhong, the two Void Realm experts before Yi Xian charged directly at Yi Xian. Both of them possessed extremely formidable strengths. At the moment they attacked, Yi Xian felt a strand of invisible pressure. Yi Xian's expression instantly sank when he saw them attack. He knew that the matter couldn't be resolved peacefully. Since it was impossible to resolve peacefully, then he had to fight. When he thought up to here, a wisp of a savage expression arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth, and he suddenly stomped his right foot. Bang! The ground exploded apart, and a strand of formidable pressure swept out from within Yi Xian, causing the two Void Realm experts to be blasted back by over 10 m. A Qi Transformation Realm expert blasted two Void Realm experts back? Everyone present here was instantly extremely shocked when they witnessed this scene, or it should be said that they felt disbelief. After all, there was a gap of 2 realms between them. A trace of disbelief could be seen in Song Zhong's eyes as well. He was slightly surprised that Yi Xian was able to completely crush Li Feng, but he wasn't very shocked. After all, even Song Qi had lost at Yi Xian's hands. However, both of them were at the Void Realm. Even though they hadn't utilized their full strength at the beginning, it wasn't something that a Qi Transformation Realm expert could go against. Song Zhong stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, he naturally understood that this young man before him was absolutely not an ordinary young man, and it could even be said to be a genius, a rare genius. When he thought up to here, Song Zhong was slightly hesitant, because he was slightly fearful. If he really expelled a genius from Kuraki Academy, then the consequences would definitely be extremely severe. After all, he was only a tiny elder. However, enmity had already been formed, and if Yi Xian was allowed to enter Kuraki Academy, then Yi Xian would definitely take revenge in the future. The revenge of a genius. When he thought up to here, his gaze gradually turned icy cold. A genius? Kuraki Academy never lacked geniuses. I can't leave any future troubles. Song Zhong slowly clenched his right fist. In an instant, a powerful airflow suddenly appeared around Yi Xian, and as soon as this airflow appeared, Yi Xian suddenly noticed that his entire body had started to tense up. Yi Xian was shocked in his heart. Song Zhong wasn't a Void Realm expert at all, but an expert above the Void Realm. He couldn't be defeated by force. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian suddenly clenched his right fist tightly, and then he smashed it forward. Bang! The airflow around him was instantly blasted apart by this punch, and right when Song Zhong was about to attack again, Yi Xian flashed backwards and arrived at the foot of the mountain with a few leaps. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of Song Zhong's mouth when he witnessed this scene. Trying to flee? How laughable. As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, Yi Xian charged onto the Nine Palaces formation platform. Seeing this scene, the people halfway up the mountain and at the foot of the mountain were all stunned. Even Song Zhong was stunned. What was he going to do? The moment Yi Xian stepped onto the Nine Palaces platform, it violently shook, and then a beam of light suddenly shot up from the center of the platform into the sky. At this moment, countless people from Kuraki Academy looked up at the sky. Nine Palaces light pillar? Heavens, who is this? He actually wants to challenge the Nine Palaces formation? Could it be Nguesher? The Nine Palaces formation. It hasn't been activated for decades. Could it be Nguesher? Who exactly is it? Soon, figures ran down from the top of the mountain. The Nine Palaces platform had been activated, and it was obvious that someone wanted to challenge the Nine Palaces formation. On the back of the red-crowned crane, Song Zhong was also stunned. He originally thought that Yi Xian was going to escape, but he didn't expect that Yi Xian would actually go onto the Nine Palaces platform and challenge the Nine Palaces formation. When it was confirmed that Yi Xian was going to challenge the Nine Palaces formation, Song Zhong suddenly laughed. Yi Xian, the old man has finally seen what it means to seek one's own death. That's good, you've saved the old man a lot of trouble by courting death like this. Nine Palaces formation. This formation was formed by 9 wooden puppets. When the 9 wooden puppets attacked together, they could instantly kill a Ascendant Realm expert. Let alone an Ascendant Realm expert. Even if he went up there, he didn't have the confidence to break the formation. In fact, he had no confidence at all. This formation didn't just test one's strength, but also one's foundation, temperament, talent, and combatability. The ancestral master of Kuraki Academy left this formation because he was afraid that Kuraki Academy would lose its talented people, those true talents. Soon, countless people gathered around the Nine Palaces platform. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian on the platform and discussing. Lu Xiaoran led the little fatty and Yi Ling over to the Nine Palaces platform, and his expression changed slightly when he saw Yi Xian. Is Yi Xian going to challenge the Nine Palaces platform? On the other hand, even though Yi Ling, who was wrapped in a thick coat, didn't know what was going on, she was able to sense that it was definitely nothing good. Yi Ling's face was pale and extremely nervous. Uncle? Uncle Lu, big brother will be fine, right? Lu Xiaoran sighed softly. He glanced at Yi Ling and hesitated for a moment before he said, "Don't worry, he'll be fine." As he spoke, he raised his head and gazed at Yi Xian, but there was a trace of worry in his eyes. The Nine Palaces formation. No one in the entire Jiang Kingdom had been able to successfully challenge the Nine Palaces formation for a few dozen years. Moreover, practically all those who had challenged the Nine Palaces formation had died miserably. Even though he knew that Yi Xian's strength wasn't bad and his origins were mysterious, it was the Nine Palaces formation. As soon as Yi Xian stepped foot onto the Nine Palaces platform, the 9 wooden figures that were standing nearby suddenly seemed as if they'd come to life. They slowly walked over to Yi Xian and surrounded Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was emotionless, or it should be said that there was killing intent in his eyes. He hadn't expected that the situation would develop to such an extent. Song Zhong was clearly targeting him. Fight them head-on? This was Kuraki Academy, and even 10,000 of him couldn't defeat it. He had no other choice but to challenge the Nine Palaces formation. Yi Xian discarded the distracting thoughts in his mind and glanced at the surroundings. The 9 wooden figures were holding wooden swords and hadn't moved, but he'd sensed danger. Yi Xian naturally didn't dare act carelessly, and his entire body was on guard. At this moment, one of the wooden figures in front of him suddenly drew its sword, and this sword was aimed straight at the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. The moment the first wooden figure drew its sword, the crowd was in an uproar. "How is this possible?" someone exclaimed. "The speed of this wooden figure's sword is so fast. Could it be that these 9 wooden figures are all swordsmen? 9 chi-controlling realm sword cultivators. I'm afraid even a levitation realm powerhouse can be killed instantly." On the back of the crane, Song Zhong was also a little shocked. He knew that these wooden figures weren't simple, but he didn't expect them to be existences like swordsmen. After all, the 9 Palaces platform hadn't been activated for a very long time. In the blink of an eye, Song Zhong smiled. Although these wooden figures were only at the chi-controlling realm, if they were swordsmen, then their terror could no longer be measured by the realm alone. 9 chi-controlling realm swordsmen experts, coupled with the support of the formation, were almost invincible in the chi-controlling realm, even in the levitation realm. In the entire younger generation of Jiang country, perhaps only existences at the level of Anguisher could give it a try. As for Yi Xian? Song Zhong looked at Yi Xian and sneered. "Yi Xian, if you want to be in the limelight, if you want to make a name for yourself, why don't you take a look at yourself first?" On the 9 Palaces platform, when the first wooden figure drew its sword, Yi Xian's first impression was fast, accurate, and ruthless. However, he was a little surprised because although this sword was fast, it was very weak. He didn't know why he felt this way, he just felt that it was very weak. In this way, under the gaze of countless people, the wooden sword directly stabbed into Yi Xian's chest. Yi Xian didn't dodge. Everyone was stunned. In the blink of an eye, under everyone's astonished gaze, the wooden sword trembled violently, then turned into a glimmer of light and sank into Yi Xian's body. Almost at the same time, the Ling Xiao sword in his body trembled, as if something had happened. Around him, the wooden swords of the remaining 8 wooden figures also arrived in front of Yi Xian. Similarly, he didn't dodge. The moment these wooden swords came into contact with him, they completely disappeared without a trace. Not only the people around him, but even Yi Xian himself was stunned. "Senior? What's going on? Did you make a move?" After a moment of silence, the mysterious woman's voice sounded. "You cultivate the invincible sword body technique. You can devour swords that are weaker than the spiritual sword in your body. Do you understand?" Just as Yi Xian was about to speak at this moment, Song Zhong suddenly shouted angrily. "You cheated." Chapter 36. You. Song Zhong glared at Yi Xian, his face turning purple with anger. If Yi Xian wasn't on the 9 Palace platform, he would have already made his move. Because Kuraki Academy had a rule that no one was allowed to interfere once someone was on the 9 Palace platform, especially Ashenwood Academy. To put it bluntly, this test was set up by the ancestors of Kuraki Academy to prevent the old teachers from cheating and missing out on the true monstrous geniuses. Thus, even though Song Zhong's lungs were about to explode, he didn't dare to make a move. On the 9 Palace platform, Yi Xian didn't pay attention to Song Zhong. Instead, he scanned the surroundings and saw that the wooden puppets weren't moving anymore. He thought for a moment and said, "Now I pass, right?" "Pass?" Below the 9 Palace platform, Song Zhong sneered, "You cheated and destroyed the wooden puppet swords and you call that passing?" Yi Xian looked coldly at Song Zhong and interrupted him. "Cheating? Do you have proof?" Song Zhong said angrily, "Proof? You're just a chi transformation realm cultivator, how could you make those wooden swords disappear in an instant? And you still say you didn't cheat?" Yi Xian looked around and sighed, "I finally understand why this array hasn't been broken for so many years. So, breaking the array is cheating. TSK, I've learned something new." All around there was a lot of discussion. At this time, a Kuraki Academy student suddenly came in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. "You're just a chi transformation realm cultivator, how could you possibly break this 9 Palace array?" Yi Xian looked straight at the student, "But I already broke it." The student shook his head, "There's definitely something fishy about this." As Elder Song Zhong said, "You must have used some special method." Hearing this, the surrounding Kuraki Academy students all nodded. They naturally wouldn't believe that someone could break the 9 Palace array, let alone so easily. Because when they first joined Kuraki Academy, they didn't dare to have any thoughts about breaking the 9 Palace array. Even the super monstrous geniuses that led the inner court and inner court of Kuraki Academy weren't able to pass through the 9 Palaces formation. But this man in front of them, how could he? Cheating. Almost everyone was certain that Yi Xian had cheated. Yi Xian glanced at the wooden men around him. At this moment these wooden men were no longer moving. After pondering for a moment, he asked in his heart, "Senior, is this considered cheating? Are you stupid?" The mysterious woman suddenly said, "Although you haven't comprehended the sword will, your heart of the sword is clear, and you're cultivating the invincible sword body technique, using the sword to forge your body. Although you haven't mastered it yet, you're already a little mature. These wooden puppets can only be considered as low-level swordsmen. Although they're powerful with the help of the formation, you're a genuine great swordsman. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you're a half-step grandmaster of kendo. Plus, your invincible sword body technique can absorb swords. If they're not swordsmen, you might have to spend more effort, but if they're swordsmen, you're the bane of their existence." Hearing this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. The reason why he asked that was because he had won too easily. But now that he heard the mysterious woman's words, he finally understood. When he thought up to hear, he gazed at Song Zhong and was about to speak. However, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared here, and the students in the surroundings hurriedly bowed deeply and spoke in unison, "Vice Dean Li Xiu." Even Song Zhong hurriedly bowed. Vice Dean. In the Tsongshan Academy there were 3 vice deans, and these 3 vice deans were all people with real power. Li Xiu. Yi Xian glanced at Li Xiu and his heart shuddered. Unfathomable. This man's strength might only be slightly lower than the 9th floor master on the cloud ship. A real big shot had appeared. However, this was also his goal. His goal of challenging the 9 palace array was to lure the big shot of Green Mountain Academy out. Li Xiu glanced at Song Zhong. Public affairs are public affairs, private affairs are private affairs. Using public affairs for personal gain is undesirable. From now on, you don't need to be responsible for the recruitment. Go report to the logistics department at the back of the mountain. Hearing this, Li Xiu's face instantly turned pale, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Vice Dean, this person hasn't reached the Imperial Qi realm. It wasn't my fault to stop him. Li Xiu interrupted Song Zhong. "I don't know what grudges you have with him, but this recruitment is related to the future prosperity of Green Mountain Academy. How can you mix personal grudges with it? Don't say any more." Song Zhong's expression was extremely ugly, but he didn't dare to say anything. But he didn't leave either. He just retreated to the side and stared at Yi Xian. Li Xiu turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Greetings, Vice Dean." The Vice Dean sized up Yi Xian. "Although I don't know what method you used to destroy those wooden swords, but with your foundation and combat power, you are already qualified to join my Verdantwood Academy." Speaking up to here, he suddenly frowned. He seemed to have noticed something. He quickly walked in front of Yi Xian and put a hand on Yi Xian's shoulder. Inside Yi Xian's body, the Ling Xiao sword quietly disappeared. Soon Li Xiu withdrew his hand and looked deeply at Yi Xian. "You don't have a dantian." As soon as he said this, everyone was stunned. Song Zhong was also slightly stunned, but in the blink of an eye, he was so happy that he almost laughed crazily. Yi Xian was silent, and he asked in his heart, "Senior, why did I put away the Ling Xiao sword? Can't I reveal my special dantian to others?" "Of course not." The mysterious woman said, "This method is too shocking. If they find out that you have a sword as your dantian with your current strength, it is very likely that you will be in great danger because this is a completely new cultivation method and system." Hearing this, Yi Xian thought for a moment and felt that it was reasonable, so he nodded. "I don't have a dantian." "Ha!" Song Zhong suddenly laughed. "You don't have a dantian? In other words, you, Yi Xian, can only be a martial artist, a low-level martial artist. What qualifications do you have to join my Green Mountain Academy?" Yi Xian ignored Song Zhong and looked at Li Xiu in front of him. After a moment of silence, Li Xiu said, "You don't have a dantian, so it will be difficult for you to enter the Xiantian realm. The academy can't give resources to a student without a dantian, so you can't become a student of Green Mountain Academy. However, your foundation is good, so you can stay in the academy and become a martial disciple." Martial disciples were low-level handymen in the academy, who specialized in doing odd jobs for students and teachers. Martial disciple? Yi Xian's face darkened. He naturally wouldn't become a martial disciple. He wanted to join Green Mountain Academy. Just as he was about to release his battle intent, Lu Sharon's anxious voice suddenly rang out, "Little friend Yi." Yi Xian looked over, and when he saw the appearance of Yi Ling, who was standing next to Lu Shaoran, his expression instantly changed. At this moment, Yi Ling's head was covered in white frost, and his body emitted waves of cold air. His entire body was like a block of ice. Yi Xian was shocked. He hurriedly ran to Lu Shaoran and picked up Yi Ling. As soon as he touched Yi Ling, the cold air coming from Yi Ling's body made him shiver. At this moment Yi Xian was panicking out of his wits. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at Li Xiu, who was not far away, and pleaded, "Senior, please let the doctors of Green Mountain Academy take a look at my sister." Li Xiu glanced at Yi Ling and shook his head. There are only 3 medical grandmasters in Green Mountain Academy. How could they come out to treat someone so easily? There were less than 10 medical grandmasters in the entire country of Jiang, and Green Mountain Academy had 3. These people could be said to be national treasures, and it was too difficult to invite them. Even he might not be able to invite a medical grandmaster, and even if he could, he would have to pay a certain price. And the young man in front of him had no value at all. How could he pay a certain price to invite a medical grandmaster? Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Li Xiu shook his head. Your dantian has been shattered, and you can only advance beyond the Qi Change realm for the rest of your life. If you're willing, you can stay in Green Mountain Academy and become a martial disciple. If you're unwilling, leave immediately. With that he flicked his sleeves and left. Yi Xian, whose dantian had been shattered, had no value to Green Mountain Academy. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly hugged Yi Ling, whose aura was getting weaker and weaker, and stood in front of Li Xiu. Yi Xian knelt on one knee and looked at Li Xiu with bloodshot eyes. If Green Mountain Academy is willing to save my sister, I, Yi Xian, will go through water and tread on fire for Green Mountain Academy, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Li Xiu looked at Yi Xian, and after a moment his eyes gradually turned cold. You're not qualified. With that he turned and walked up the mountain. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but at this moment, "Brother," Yi Ling, who was in Yi Xian's arms, suddenly said in pain, "No, don't treat him. Brother, you hurry up and get up." Tears kept flowing from Yi Ling's eyes, and these tears were actually icy blue. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly. She felt wronged not for herself but for her brother. When had her brother ever knelt to someone before? No, she really didn't want to treat him anymore. Yi Xian sat on the ground hugging Yi Ling, who was getting colder and colder. He hugged her tightly and his whole body trembled. The tears in his eyes were like a broken dam, and he cried like a child, "I'm sorry. Brother, I'm useless. I'm sorry." In Yi Xian's arms Yi Ling pressed her head against Yi Xian's chest. The coldness in her body was getting stronger, but her aura was getting weaker and weaker. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly, and she raised her head to look at Yi Xian and squeezed out a smile. "Brother, don't cry. I'm already very happy to die in my brother's arms." Yi Xian hugged Yi Ling tightly, and his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Inside his body, Ling Xiao's sword kept trembling, and his whole body was already on the verge of collapse. Yi Ling held Yi Xian's cheeks with both hands and looked at Yi Xian. As she looked, she suddenly smiled. "Brother, after I die, bring my ashes with you. I want to accompany you for the rest of my life. Also, live well, you must live well." As she said that, she slowly closed her eyes and her aura became weaker and weaker. "Brother, in my next life I'll still be your little sister." Chapter 37. Yi Ling's breath became weaker and weaker until it was almost undetectable. Yi Xian hugged Yi Ling tightly as his body trembled uncontrollably. At the corner of his mouth, blood continuously flowed out. All around, countless people stared at the pair of brother and sister. Looking at Yi Xian and his sister, Lu Sharon's expression was complicated. He didn't expect things to turn out this way. He didn't expect that Yi Xian didn't have a dantian. Without a dantian, it meant that he would never be able to condense qi for the rest of his life. At this moment, Song Zhong suddenly sneered, "Someone come, chase this pair of brother and sister down Song Mountain." Just as several experts rushed towards Yi Xian and his sister, an old man quietly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man's hair was unkempt, his clothes were tattered, and his body exuded a pungent smell of alcohol. Seeing the sudden appearance of this old man, Song Zhong frowned because he didn't know how this old man appeared. The strong men who had been dashing toward Yi Xian and his younger sister also stopped. Song Zhong stared at the old man. "Who are you?" The old man didn't answer Song Zhong, but looked at Yi Xian and his sister. He sized up Yi Ling and said, "I can save her." Hearing this, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. The old man looked straight at Yi Xian. "Are you willing to enter my Tsonglan Academy?" Tsonglan Academy? The crowd was in an uproar. This was Tsonglan Academy's mortal enemy. No, the current Tsonglan Academy was no longer qualified to be Tsonglan Academy's opponent. Song Zhong stared at the old man. "You are from Tsonglan Academy?" The old man ignored Song Zhong and only looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian stared straight at the old man. "As long as you can save my sister, I, Yi Xian, will not let down Tsonglan Academy." The old man pointed at Song Shan with his right hand. From the foot of the mountain, there are a total of 36 corpses of Tsanglan Academy students. Every one of them died miserably. In the future you may become one of them. Yixian looked straight at the old man. As long as you can save my sister, I, Yixian, will have no regrets even if I become one of them. The old man looked at Yixian for a long time. Did you bring back the corpses hanging on the Xiaodao in Song Mountain? Yixian looked straight at the old man. If you can save my sister in this life, I will do everything in my power. The old man took a deep look at Yixian. From now on, you are a student of my Tsanglan Academy. After saying that, he squatted down and placed one hand on Yiling's pulse. After a moment, he took a deep look at Yiling without saying anything. His thumb gently touched a pitch-black ring on his index finger. In the blink of an eye, a tiny flame lotus appeared in his palm. Along with the appearance of this flame lotus, the surrounding temperature suddenly rose. Fire spirit! Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Cang Zhong's face was also filled with astonishment. In this world there were some natural oddities, and these natural oddities were extremely precious existences. For example, this fire spirit was a priceless existence. No, this wasn't something that could be bought with money. Even in Tsangmu Academy, this kind of natural oddities was extremely rare. Under everyone's gaze, the old man flicked his finger and the fire spirit directly entered between Yiling's eyebrows. Soon, the cold air on Yiling's body receded like a receding tide. The old man's right hand was tightly placed on Yiling's shoulder. A mysterious force was continuously transmitted into Yiling's body. Gradually, under the nervous gaze of Yixian, Yiling's face became a little rosy. Yixian was overjoyed when he witnessed this scene. After around 15 minutes, Yiling slowly opened her eyes. Yixian hurriedly grabbed Yiling's hand and spoke in a trembling voice. How is it? Yiling glanced at the surroundings in a daze. In the end, she looked at Yixian and tears flowed down her face. Big brother, I'm not dead yet? Yixian smiled, but his face was covered in tears. Meanwhile, a tiny flame suddenly condensed between Yiling's eyebrows. The old man said, the fire spirit has temporarily suppressed the cold air within her body. But according to my estimation, it can only suppress it for a month at most. After a month, the fire spirit will vanish. Yixian pulled his younger sister Yiling up, and Yiling bowed deeply to the old man. Yixian said, I, Yixian, will remember this kindness for the rest of my life. The old man nodded slightly. Come back to Tsanglan Academy with me. Yixian nodded, all right. The three of them were about to leave when Cang Zhong suddenly ridiculed, how laughable. The Tsanglan Academy has actually fallen to the point of picking up the trash that my Karaki Academy doesn't want. Oh, it's understandable. After all, who would join Tsanglan Academy now? The old man glanced at Cang Zhong, but he didn't speak and just ignored Cang Zhong. Just like that, under the gaze of countless people, the old man left with Yixian and his younger sister. Cang Zhong laughed without the slightest restraint behind the old man. How laughable! How laughable! The Tsanglan Academy has fallen to the point of picking up the trash that my Karaki Academy doesn't want. Ah! Right at this moment, a white figure suddenly flashed over from afar, and everyone here was stunned when they saw this white figure. It's Nguasher. Someone spoke these words, and the surroundings instantly seethed with excitement. Nguasher. He was the representative of the younger generation of the Jiang Kingdom, and he could be said to be the idol of everyone in the younger generation of the Jiang Kingdom. Countless people gazed at the white figure with burning gazes, and their eyes were filled with admiration and respect. Because Enlancio was the pride of the entire Jiang Kingdom. She was outstanding to the point others couldn't feel envious of her. Everyone watched as Enlancio stopped before the old man and Yixian, and then her gaze descended onto Yixian. I'm sorry. Yixian shook his head. It's none of your business. Enlancio stretched out her right hand. The jade pendant. Yixian hesitated for a moment before he said, I'll keep it. Enlancio looked Yixian in the eyes. Why? Yixian met her gaze. It's a form of friendship. Enlancio gazed at Yixian for a long time before she nodded, and then she gazed at the old man by Yixian's side. The old man glanced at Enlancio and sighed softly. As expected of the most outstanding person in the Jiang Kingdom. You've already arrived at such a level. Enlancio fell silent for a short moment. The Jiang Kingdom can't fall into chaos. The old man shook his head and chuckled. 36 corpses are still hanging on that Xiaodao. Enlancio fell silent. The old man didn't say anything else. He turned around and walked down the mountain. Yixian cupped his fists towards Enlancio. Farewell. As she finished speaking, she pulled Yi Ling along and followed after him. And Lanxiu's eyes slowly closed where she stood. Meanwhile, Song Zhong hurriedly walked in front of Lanxiu and bowed respectfully. Teacher and I? Right at this moment, Song Zhong suddenly flew over 10 meters away. Everyone was shocked. They looked at Lanxiu with eyes filled with puzzlement. Because the person who attacked was Lanxiu. And Lanxiu glanced coldly at Song Zhong, who was over 10 meters away. You dare to make things difficult for someone I recommended? Song Zhong was horrified in his heart. He was about to say something when a spear tore through the air. One of Song Zhong's arms flew off. Blood sprayed. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone looked at Lanxiu with astonishment. What's she doing? Under everyone's gaze, Lanxiu raised her head and looked at Song Mountain. Li Xiu, get down here. As her voice fell, she lightly flicked her jade-like finger. A silver spear soared into the sky. Around the silver spear, an enormous dragon that was over 100 meters long suddenly appeared. The enormous dragon soared into Tsang Mountain. A dragon's roar shook the entire Tsang Mountain. A moment of silence. Boom. Above Tsang Mountain, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly resounded. Then a horrified voice sounded. Spear intent manifestation. You've actually reached the Spear Dao Grandmaster. Spear Dao Grandmaster. As soon as these words came out, the surroundings were filled with gasps. Spear Dao Grandmaster. And Lanxiu had already reached the Spear Dao Grandmaster? She was only 19 years old. A 19-year-old Spear Dao Grandmaster. Everyone was petrified. Not to mention the history of the Jiang Kingdom, even the history of the previous dynasty had never seen such a thing. In the truest sense of the word, it was unprecedented. In next to no time, Li Xiu appeared before Lanxiu, and his expression was extremely serious. A Spear Dao Grandmaster wasn't terrifying. What was terrifying was a Spear Dao Grandmaster at such a young age. In the history of Karaki Academy, only a single person could compare to such terrifying natural talent, and it was Gu Chenshin who'd saved Karaki Academy all those years ago. That legendary figure of Karaki Academy. Yet now, Lanxiu wasn't inferior to him in the slightest. Li Xiu restrained his thoughts. Country scholar, and why are you so angry? Lanxiu glanced at Li Xiu. I can't stand the sight of you. As soon as she finished speaking, the tip of her foot tapped the ground lightly, and her figure directly floated forward. At the same time, the spear in her hand shot out violently like a bolt of lightning. Li Xiu's gaze was wretched as he stood before Lanxiu, and he didn't dare be careless in the slightest. He took half a step back, and in the next moment he stretched out his right hand and made a roll. This roll caused the wind in the surroundings to suddenly and swiftly converge towards him. In an instant, a whirlpool had appeared before him, and within the whirlpool were countless wind blades that were thin like cicada wings. Meanwhile, the spear arrived. Bang! An enormous bang that shook the heavens resounded abruptly. In the blink of an eye, the countless wind blades were blasted into pieces while a figure retreated explosively. This figure was exactly Li Xiu, and he'd retreated over 100 m back. As soon as he stopped moving, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, his entire right arm had cracked apart into the shape of a spiderweb. The surroundings were deathly silent. Lanxiu had defeated a vice dean of Karaki Academy. Everyone in the surroundings didn't know Li Xiu's true cultivation, but since he was able to become the vice dean of Karaki Academy, then how could he be trash? It could be said that Li Xiu was at least at the Nether Passage realm or perhaps even higher. Yet now he'd lost to Lanxiu. Li Xiu stared fixedly at Lanxiu. There was no flames of rage in his eyes, and there was only deep fear. Others didn't know what Lanxiu's background represented, but he did. So, when Lanxiu hadn't joined Karaki Academy all those years ago, Karaki Academy didn't dare go too far. After all, when it came to a level like Karaki Academy, some geniuses were either roped in or destroyed. On the other hand, Karaki Academy didn't dare to have any ill intentions towards Lanxiu. Lanxiu didn't attack again. She glanced at Grey Mountain and shook her head. From this moment onward, I have nothing to do with Karaki Academy. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Li Xiu's expression changed drastically when he heard Lanxiu. Country scholar, and you absolutely can't do that. If I've offended you in any way, then I apologize. Please? In the distance, Lanxiu had vanished from everyone's fields of vision. Li Xiu's expression was extremely unsightly as he stood on the spot. Right at this moment, the 8 wooden figures on the distant 9 palace platform suddenly returned to their positions, and then a figure suddenly appeared on the platform in the blink of an eye. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed drastically when they saw this figure. Because this figure was Gu Qianxin, who'd left the kingdom of Jiang for almost 300 years. Along with Gu Qianxin's appearance, all the higher-ups of Kuraki Academy were alarmed. Besides the dean who was in closed-door cultivation, the other 2 vice deans and some supreme elders had rushed over to the platform, and then they bowed in succession. Gu Qianxin glanced at the surroundings and grinned. It's rare that I'm late. Where's the person who broke the formation? His foundation is solid like a rock at such a young age. Not only has he comprehended battle intent, he's even a great swordsman. It's rare that he's cultivated both the martial arts and the sword to such an extent. Chapter 38. 3 words were rare. The surroundings were deathly silent. Gu Qianxin frowned slightly when he noticed the unusual atmosphere, and then he glanced at the surroundings. What's wrong? Meanwhile, Li Xiu stepped forward, bowed deeply to Gu Qianxin, and then recounted everything that had happened earlier. He didn't dare conceal anything at all. The surroundings grew even more silent after he finished listening. Some of the supreme elders and vice deans of Kuraki Academy glanced coldly at Li Xiu with extremely hostile expressions. If Gu Qianxin's afterimage wasn't here, then they might have flared up by now. A short while later, Gu Qianxin shook his head lightly. This formation was created by Dean Mu all those years ago. Later on, I felt that it was slightly weak, so I transformed it into a swordsman. Even if he cheated, he's still capable of breaking through this formation. Moreover, that person didn't cheat. Even though he doesn't have a dantian, it means that he's extraordinary and should be said to be terrifying. Don't all of you think it's terrifying that he was able to break through this formation without a dantian? Li Xiu's face turned slightly pale when he heard this, and his face turned even paler when he recalled Enlanxio's attitude from before. Who was Enlanxio? With such a terrifying genius, would the person she favored be mediocre? Of course not. Li Xiu laughed bitterly when he thought up to this point, and then he bowed deeply to Gu Qianxin. I was blind. Gu Qianxin shook his head. Fate can't be forced. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings. I left Pine Prefecture a few hundred years ago, and I left this afterimage behind because I wanted to see if anyone would be able to break through the formation that Dean Mu and I left behind in a short period of time. I never expected that it would be like this. Forget it. It's difficult for me to interfere in the matters of Kuraki Academy now. All of you good luck. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure gradually became ethereal. Everyone hurriedly bowed deeply when they witnessed this scene. Farewell, Dean Gu. It didn't take long for Gu Qianxin's afterimage to vanish completely. The other 2 vice deans, the instructors, and the elders gazed at Li Xiu. Li Xiu laughed bitterly. From this moment onward, I'll go meditate on the cliff of reflection. Once the dean emerges from his closed-door cultivation, I'll be at his disposal. As he spoke, he looked at a white-haired old man not far away. Brother Mo Song, I'll leave everything in the academy to you for the time being. Mo Song was the other vice dean of Kuraki Academy. Mo Song sighed in a low voice. This time you really didn't handle this well? Forget it, there's no point in saying anything now. Go reflect on the cliff of reflection and wait for the dean to come out. Wait. Right at this moment, another black-robed old man suddenly stood out. He was the other vice dean of Kuraki Academy, Kumu. The others in the surroundings gazed at Kumu when they heard him. Kumu said coldly, he's just a pretty good monster. Him not being able to join our Kuraki Academy is his loss, not ours. Forgive me for speaking bluntly, but that person doesn't have the qualifications for us to punish a vice principal. Everyone fell silent. Kumu continued. If my Kuraki Academy were to punish Li Xiu, then wouldn't we become the laughingstock of the world? Moreover, although he's not bad, he doesn't have the qualifications to make my Kuraki Academy sacrifice a vice dean. Send the order that Yi Xian is trash that my Kuraki Academy doesn't want. We want the world to know that no matter how monstrous a genius he is, he's still trash before our Kuraki Academy. The elders and instructors of Kuraki Academy exchanged glances. Some were hesitant, but some immediately expressed their agreement. Kumu continued. Since the establishment of Dean Gu, when has our Kuraki Academy ever lowered our heads to anyone? We didn't in the past and we won't in the future. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings. Students of Kuraki Academy, remember that Yi Xian has joined Kuraki Academy. Next year, I want all of you to hang his head on the Xiaodao. Our Kuraki Academy wants the world to know that not joining our Kuraki Academy is the greatest loss Yi Xian has ever suffered in his lifetime. Countless students of Kuraki Academy bowed and spoke in unison. We'll definitely hang Yi Xian's head on the Xiaodao. Kumu nodded lightly when he heard this, and the other elders including Li Xiu and the others nodded successively as well. Soon the news that Yi Xian had joined Kuraki Academy spread throughout the capital. Someone that Kuraki Academy didn't want had been picked up by Kuraki Academy. Yi Xian's name spread throughout the capital. Of course it wasn't a good reputation but a joke. Not only had Yi Xian become a joke, but even Kuraki Academy had become a joke. Kuraki Academy has come to pick up the students that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. This sentence was spreading throughout the entire imperial capital. Kuraki Academy's fame and popularity once again reached its peak. On a remote mountain path, Yi Xian carried Yi Ling on his back and followed closely behind an old man not far away from him. The old man would take a few gulps of wine from his gourd every few steps. "Brother, my body feels warm. Comfortable? Yes, that's good. Brother, promise me that you won't kneel down for me in the future, okay?" Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Ling tightly wrapped her arms around Yi Xian's neck. "Brother, I'd rather die than have you kneel down for others. I'd rather kneel down for the world than have you die. Brother, in the next life I'll still be your little sister, okay? No, in the next life, the next life, the next life." A quarter of an hour later the old man in the distance stopped. Yi Xian also stopped. Not far away from the three of them were two small mountains. They weren't very tall, only a few hundred meters tall. Compared to Kuraki Academy's Tsang Mountain, they were pitifully small. In between the two small mountain peaks, there was a small path. Beside the small path there was a stone tablet. The stone tablet was surrounded by overgrown weeds, and on top of the stone tablet, there were 4 big black words. Sanglan Academy. These 4 words were somewhat desolate. Under the old man's guidance, Yi Xian carried his little sister through the Xiao Dao. At the end of the Xiao Dao was another mountain, but it wasn't very tall. It was only slightly taller than the 2 mountains behind them. At the top of this mountain some buildings could be vaguely seen. The old man walked forward slowly, while Yi Xian carried his little sister and followed. At this moment the old man suddenly said, "I can't remember how many years it has been. You're the first person who was willing to join Kuraki Academy." Behind the old man Yi Xian was slightly stunned. In an instant he said in astonishment, "Senior, may I ask how many students are there in Kuraki Academy? Including you too." The old man didn't even turn his head. Yi Xian was stunned in place. After a while, he hurriedly carried his little sister to the old man's side. "Senior, are you sure you're not joking?" The old man glanced at Yi Xian. "Do you think I'm joking with you?" "No," Yi Xian gulped. "You, Kuraki Academy including me really only has 2 students?" The old man nodded. Seeing that the old man didn't seem to be joking, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Senior, 2 people? This." He was already somewhat speechless. The old man lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "Don't worry, I've already recruited." "Oh no, I've already recruited 2 more people. They'll be arriving soon. At that time, Kuraki Academy will have 4 people." After saying that, he walked towards the distant mountain peak. Yi Xian was stunned in place. On Yi Xian's back, Yi Ling glanced at the old man in the distance and said softly, "Brother, it seems like you've been tricked." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "He saved you. For this, brother is willing to jump into any trap." After saying that, he carried Yi Ling on his back and hurriedly followed. Soon, under the old man's lead, the 3 of them arrived at the mountain peak. At the mountain peak, there was only a dilapidated hall and a dozen or so houses. The paint on the outside of the hall had almost peeled off, and there were even a few large cracks on the walls. Not only that, the hall only had 1 door. And at a glance, there were weeds everywhere. Yi Xian turned to look at the old man. The old man said, "Kuraki Hall is where we usually discuss matters and entertain guests. However, it's been many years since it's been used for such matters. And it's a little abandoned, clean it up later. The only thing I can do is to update steadily and add chapters from time to time. I hope everyone can understand." Chapter 39. At this moment time seemed to freeze. Yi Xian's expression was grave, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. The strength of the woman behind him had exceeded his expectations. If he had not turned around just now, he might have been able to fight against her. However, because he had turned around, he had lost the initiative and was now in a dilemma. After a moment of silence, the knife on his neck suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian did not leave. He turned around and saw that the woman had already put on her clothes. The woman was wearing a long black dress with mountains and rivers painted on it. She had a slender figure and a black sash was tied around her waist, accentuating her slender figure. Her eyes were like water, but they carried a faint coldness as if they could see through everything. So beautiful. That was Yi Xian's first impression and feeling. When he thought of some of the scenes from before, Yi Xian immediately felt a little hot. Although Yi Xian had never been close to a woman, it did not mean that he was not a man. He had everything that a normal man should have. The woman slowly walked in front of Yi Xian. She just looked at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's scalp to go numb. Yi Xian and the woman looked at each other, and in his eyes, there was only disgust. It was as if looking at a woman's body was a very shameful thing. The Jiang country was not very open-minded, and women were very concerned about their innocence. Yi Xian also knew this. The reason why he was like this was naturally because he wanted to avoid trouble. Moreover, this matter was mainly because he was in the wrong. However, he also felt very wronged. Only the heavens knew that there were other people here, and this woman was bathing in broad daylight. However, she was really beautiful. If he could look at her a few more times, he would not mind. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he was shocked. Did he want to look at her a few more times? At this moment, the woman suddenly spoke. "Who are you?" Her voice was cold, and there was a trace of killing intent in her eyes. Yi Xian hurriedly collected his thoughts and said, "Yi Xian, new student." After saying this, he took a few steps back. It did not seem like he was trying to escape, but rather to get away from the woman. Moreover, there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. Noticing Yi Xian's actions, the woman frowned. "Am I that unsightly?" Yi Xian glanced at the woman and didn't say anything. However, he took 2 steps back. This was enough to explain everything. The woman sized up Yi Xian and shook her head. "You're a handsome man, but you're gay? How do men get along with men?" Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Yi Xian did not answer, the woman did not pursue the matter. She looked at Yi Xian with pity, then turned around and walked to her room. Seeing that the woman had left, Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief. This matter was over. Yi Xian hurriedly left the courtyard and found 2 rooms at the side. After cleaning the rooms, he went to the back mountain for a stroll. When he returned, he already had some game in his hands. Surviving in the wild was something that Yi Xian was very good at because he had once relied on hunting game to support himself and his sister. Yi Xian arrived at Kanglin Palace. At this moment, Yi Ling had already cleaned up the palace. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Ling hurriedly ran to Yi Xian and smiled sweetly. "Brother." Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "Tired?" Yi Ling shook her head. "Not tired." Yi Xian smiled. "Clean up the tables at the side. Brother will go cook." Hearing this, Yi Ling's eyes lit up with anticipation. She loved eating Yi Xian's cooking the most, and it could be said that even the chefs of the Yi family couldn't compare to Yi Xian's cooking. An hour later in Kanglin Palace, Yi Xian and his sister Yi Ling sat before a large shabby table. There were 4 or 5 appetizers on the table, and their fragrance assailed their nostrils. The siblings looked at each other and smiled. Just as they were about to pick up their chopsticks, a figure walked over from the side. It was the old man. The old man's entire body emitted an unpleasant smell of alcohol. His clothes seemed as if they hadn't been washed for many years, and his original appearance was unrecognizable. The old man didn't stand on ceremony and sat at the head of the table. He was just about to pick up his chopsticks when another person walked over from the side. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw who it was. It was the woman he'd met earlier. The woman sat on the old man's left. She glanced at the dishes on the table and then looked at Yi Xian. "Did you cook for me?" "Yi Xian." Yi Ling blinked. She glanced at Yi Xian and then at the woman. The woman didn't say anything else. She picked up her chopsticks and picked up a small piece of mushroom. After a while, she nodded. "Not bad." Hearing this, the old man picked up a piece of mushroom and put it in his mouth. After chewing, he glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. "All right. From now on, Kanglin Academy's meals will be yours." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He wanted to beat someone up. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly tilted her head and looked at the old man. "But my brother is a student." The old man glanced at Yi Ling. "Cooking is also a form of cultivation." "Yi Ling." Yi Xian couldn't stand it anymore. "Senior? Dean?" The old man turned to look at Yi Xian. "Call me Dean Ji." Yi Xian nodded. "Dean Ji, for such a big academy, shouldn't we hire a few handymen?" The old man asked in return. "Are you paying?" Yi Xian was stunned for a while before saying, "Shouldn't you be paying?" Dean Ji shook his head. "I don't have money. I can't even afford to drink." "Yi Xian." The woman didn't say anything. She just ate. She kept on eating. The speed at which she ate made Yi Xian and his sister dumbfounded. That speed was really abnormally fast. It was as if she hadn't eaten for more than 10 days. After a while, all the dishes on the table were swept clean. The woman licked her chopsticks. Then she turned to look at Yi Xian. Is there anything else? Yi Xian. Yi Ling put down her chopsticks. Then she said, there's still something left. I'll go wash it. After saying that, she turned and ran to the back of the hall. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, is it safe here? Old man Ji nodded. Yes. Yi Xian hesitated. Then he asked again, Dean Ji, since it's an academy, there's naturally a place to learn. No. Old man Ji answered directly. Self-study. Yi Xian, Martial Arts Hall. At this moment, the woman suddenly said. She was still licking her chopsticks. Old man Ji looked at Yi Xian. There's a martial arts hall in the back mountain. There are some martial arts notes left by former students. As for martial arts techniques, if you're lucky, you might be able to find one or two. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. I'll go cook. After saying that, he turned and left. Next to the table, only the woman and the old man were left. The woman put down her chopsticks. Where did you find it? Old man Ji took a sip of wine and said, I picked it up at Karaki Academy. The woman was silent for a moment. Then she asked again, why him? The old man said, he has potential. The woman said indifferently, I alone am enough. The old man's hand trembled slightly. After a moment he picked up the wine gourd and took a sip. Then he said softly, and Ji, you're carrying too much. The woman said indifferently, this is my life and also my responsibility. After saying that, she turned to look outside the hall. Although they're dead, their souls are imprisoned in their bodies. As long as they're not brought back, they won't be able to rest in peace. And big brother, second brother, father? The old man slowly closed his eyes. You're the only bloodline of the Ji family. The woman chuckled. Then I'm even more duty-bound. The old man shook his head. Those two in the country of Jiang, probably only in Lanxiu can suppress them. The woman stood up. Where there's a will, there's a will. After saying that, she walked into the distance. When she reached the entrance of the hall, she suddenly stopped and said with a smile, the worst outcome is just another corpse of Tsang Mountain's Xiao Dao. After saying that, she disappeared into the distance. Inside the hall, only the sound of the old man drinking wine could be heard. At night, after Yi Ling fell asleep, Yi Xian entered the World Prison Pagoda. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and asked, Senior, am I a great swordsman? Yes. The mysterious woman answered. What? Yi Xian was a little puzzled because he still hadn't been able to release sword light. The mysterious woman said, what you're lacking now is only the realm. As long as you reach the qi-resisting realm and condense the qi in your body, with your current body foundation and your attainments in the sword, you can use sword qi at any time. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, then my battle intent. Do you know martial arts? The mysterious woman asked. Yi Xian shook his head. The mysterious woman said, your current situation is that you've comprehended battle intent in advance, but you haven't gone through the process of martial arts, so you're not a martial arts grandmaster at all. Moreover, to become a real martial arts grandmaster, you still need to materialize battle intent. The current you doesn't have that ability yet. What you need to do now is to accumulate the basic knowledge of martial arts. Of course, you can't slack off on your swordsmanship. Also, you can start looking for swords. Spiritual swords. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Where was he going to look for spiritual swords? But he couldn't afford it. This was a big problem. After a while, Yi Xian began to cultivate. Apart from practicing his swordsmanship, he also practiced his fists and kicks. The only martial technique he knew was the collapsing fist. After adding the battle will, he discovered that the power of the collapsing fist had undergone a qualitative change. If he added battle intent, the collapsing fist would be at least lower mystic level. At this moment, he truly realized how terrifying battle intent was, and if he comprehended sword intent, then the might of the deciding life and death sword would probably be even more terrifying. The night passed, and Yi Xian suddenly rushed down the mountain at dawn the next day. Because old man Ji told him that a woman surnamed An was looking for him. In next to no time, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of the mountain, and Yi Xian saw a woman in white clothes that were spotless. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Lanxiu. Yi Xian walked over to Lanxiu and smiled, Miss An. Lanxiu nodded and was about to speak when a sloppy man walked over from nearby. The man carried a black iron rod on his back, and he walked unsteadily. When the man saw Enlancio, his eyes instantly lit up. Beautiful, a beauty? Yi Xian suddenly stood in front of Enlancio and glanced at the man. I'm pretty handsome too. You can watch for free. Chapter 40. Enlancio, who stood behind Yi Xian, glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. On the other hand, the man who stood before Yi Xian sized up Yi Xian and said, Kid, it looks to me like you're asking for a beating. As soon as he finished speaking, the man suddenly smashed his iron rod towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched his right fist tightly, and battle intent condensed on his fist. He punched. The sound of an explosion suddenly rang out. Bang. Along with this explosion, the man was pushed over 10 back along with his iron rod, and his pitch-black iron rod was trembling violently. On the other hand, Yi Xian had moved over 3 back as well, and his right hand was trembling slightly. The man who stood before Yi Xian glanced at his iron rod, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. You have some ability. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly tossed his iron rod towards Yi Xian. A sharp whistle resounded through the air. Yi Xian's face was emotionless. When the iron rod arrived before him, he suddenly smashed his right fist forward. It was just a simple punch. Fist crush. A single punch could shatter metal and shatter rocks. Bang. The iron rod shook violently and was blasted flying back. However, right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and in the blink of an eye, a strand of cold light shot towards Yi Xian's throat. Danger. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This was his first feeling and he didn't dare conceal it any longer. He twisted his right hand lightly. Boom. A low and heavy sword howl resounded, and in the blink of an eye, bang. A silhouette was forced to retreat over 100 feet. It was that man. After the man stopped moving, he gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. Swordsman. You're actually a swordsman. Yi Xian glanced at the man. Do you still want to fight me? The man chuckled. Yes, of course. When have I, Mo Yunqi, ever feared anyone in my lifetime? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, a cold light flashed. The man called Mo Yunqi's expression changed greatly. You didn't even say anything before starting the fight. As he spoke, he swung the iron rod in his hand upwards. Hard, hard, hard. Bang. An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out, and in the blink of an eye, Mo Yunqi's entire body was pushed back a distance of over 100 feet. This time Yi Xian didn't attack again. Instead, he retreated to Enlancio's side and glanced at her. I forgot myself. Enlan smiled without saying a word. Yi Xian's expression was rather unnatural, or rather, slightly embarrassed. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked towards the nearby Mo Yunqi and said, Let's continue fighting. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Mo Yunqi. Enlancio glanced at the distant Yi Xian. It was unknown what she was thinking. After around 10 minutes passed, a voice suddenly resounded, That's enough. It was Old Man Ji's voice. As soon as this voice resounded, Old Man Ji appeared not too far away from Enlancio. He nodded slightly to her, and then he gazed at Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi. However, they didn't stop. Old Man Ji suddenly gazed at Enlancio. Guoshuren, do you really care about him? Of course he was referring to Yi Xian. Enlancio lightly combed her hair behind her ear. Yes. Old Man Ji's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. Guoshuren, do you know what you're talking about? Enlancio chuckled lightly. Just because he dared to stand before a few thousand troops of the Tang Empire, he's qualified to be my friend. Of course we're friends now. Friend. Old Man Ji sighed lightly. In the entire kingdom of Jiang, there were probably less than a handful of people who were qualified to be friends with this little girl. Bang. Meanwhile, an explosion suddenly resounded from afar, and then Mo Yunqi was blasted over 30 m away. Yi Xian didn't attack again, and he retreated to Enlancio's side instead. Mo Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian and Enlancio, and he didn't attack as well. Old Man Ji glanced at Mo Yunqi. Both of you are students of Tsanglan Academy from now on. Both Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi were stunned. Students of Tsanglan Academy? Mo Yunqi pointed at Yi Xian. He's a student of Tsanglan Academy as well? Old Man Ji spoke indifferently. What? Is there a problem? Mo Yunqi glanced at Old Man Ji. Old man, how many students are there in our Tsanglan Academy? Old Man Ji said, There's a total of 3 including you. However, there's another one coming soon. By then there'll be 4. Mo Yunqi was dumbstruck and he turned around and left quite some time later. I'm going to Karaki Academy. Old Man Ji glanced at Mo Yunqi. Do you not want the second half of sweeping staff technique? In the distance, Mo Yunchi stopped and he turned around to look at Old Man Ji. Old man, great-grandpa, one academy for students. Are you sure this academy has a future? Old Man Ji said indifferently, you've already signed the application form for Tsanglan Academy. Even if you go to Kuraki Academy now, they won't want you. Hearing this, Mo Yunchi pointed at Old Man Ji angrily. Old man, you're tricking me. Old Man Ji shrugged. I didn't force you back then. You were the one who begged me to let you join Tsanglan Academy. Hearing this, Mo Yunchi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. You still have the nerve to say that? You said that Tsanglan Academy is about the same as Kuraki Academy. It's about the same. Old Man Ji said, they're both in the imperial capital, they're both academies. Is there a problem? Mo Yunchi was so angry that he almost breathed his last. This is what you call about the same? This is the difference between heaven and earth. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't win, he probably would have fought. At this moment, Old Man Ji flicked his finger, and a black scroll fell in front of Mo Yunchi. Mo Yunchi glanced at it, and in the next moment, his eyes lit up, and he hurriedly put the scroll away. Old Man Ji pointed at the top of the mountain. Mo Yunchi was a little conflicted, and he glanced at the scroll in his hand. In the end, he sighed deeply and then walked towards the top of the mountain reluctantly. However, when he passed by Yi Xian and Enlanxiu, he suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Let's fight after I finish practicing this second half. Yi Xian shrugged. Anytime. Fight? He liked it too. Not far away, Old Man Ji suddenly said, Kid, this is the imperial capital, you'd better keep a low profile. Mo Yunchi snorted coldly, low profile? Old man, I'm so outstanding, do I need to keep a low profile? I'm not boasting, but in the entire imperial capital, is there anyone more outstanding than me? When he spoke up to here, he glanced at the sky and spoke heroically, isn't the number one genius of our Jiang kingdom that Enlanxiu? That was in the past. Now that I, Mo Yunchi, have risen, Enlanxiu is nothing. Just you wait, I'll beat her until she cries. Yi Xian had a rather strange expression on his face. Old Man Ji shook his head. It's the first time I've seen someone court death like this. Mo Yunchi was just about to speak when a white afterimage suddenly appeared behind him. Mo Yunchi's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly turned around before smashing the iron rod in his hand down. Bang! Along with an explosion, Mo Yunchi's figure was blasted flying. In the next moment, the ground trembled violently, and then a strange scene appeared. A figure was smashing the ground incessantly while howling incessantly. Just like that, this continued for an entire 15 minutes before the figure finally stopped. It was Mo Yunchi. At this moment, Mo Yunchi was lying on the ground like a pile of mud, and his entire face was swollen like a pig's head. Enlanxiu gazed at Yi Xian. Accompany me for a walk? Brother Yi grinned. All right. The two of them walked side by side towards the nearby Xiao Dao. Mo Yunchi roared furiously from behind them. Just you wait. Just you wait. If I don't avenge her, then She's Enlanxiu. Old Man Ji had suddenly appeared by Mo Yunchi's side. Mo Yunchi's voice stopped abruptly, and then his head tilted to the side in the blink of an eye. Old Man Ji kicked Mo Yunchi. Don't play dead. Get up and continue roaring. What's Enlanxiu? Beat her until she cries. Mo Yunchi didn't move at all. Old Man Ji didn't say anything else. He just pulled Mo Yunchi's leg up, and then he dragged Mo Yunchi up the mountain. On a certain Xiao Dao, Yi Xian and Enlanxiu were walking side by side. Enlanxiu spoke in a light voice. I never expected that you would join Tsanglan Academy. Yi Xian fell silent. He also didn't expect that he would join Tsanglan Academy by a freak combination of factors. It could only be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Enlanxiu suddenly stopped. I'm leaving the state of Jiang. I'm here to bid farewell today. Leave the state of Jiang. Yi Xian turned to look at Enlanxiu. Enlanxiu looked straight at Yi Xian. I'm worried about you. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't understand. Enlanxiu took a step forward. At this moment she was very close to Yi Xian. Yi Xian could already clearly smell the faint fragrance from Enlanxiu's body. Enlanxiu looked straight at Yi Xian. Everyone has underestimated you. I might even have underestimated you. I don't know what kind of fortuitous encounter you had, nor do I know what your true trump card is. However, you make me feel a trace of danger. Saying that, she shook her head and smiled. In the entire state of Jiang, there are very few people who can make me feel a sense of danger. Moreover, this kind of danger is not the kind of danger under normal circumstances. Yi Xian fell silent. Enlancio continued to walk forward while Yi Xian followed slowly. After a while, Enlancio said softly, "After I leave, there might not be anyone in the state of Jiang who can truly suppress you in the future. Moreover, your character is too impulsive and straightforward. I'm afraid that one day the imperial capital will fall into chaos because of you." Saying that, she turned to look at Yi Xian. "Promise me one thing. After I leave, if it's within your ability, take care of the state of Jiang." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "You might be thinking too highly of me." Enlancio smiled lightly. "You still haven't answered me." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I promise you that in the future, I will do my best to help the state of Jiang." "Do you know what I like about you?" Enlancio suddenly asked. "Like me?" Yi Xian was stunned and his mind went blank. Enlancio was also slightly stunned. She knew that she seemed to have misspoken. However, she didn't explain anything and only smiled before continuing to walk into the distance. Yi Xian was in a daze for a moment. Then he followed her slowly. For a time, the two of them didn't speak and just walked like that. After a while, Enlancio stopped and took out a black jade pendant and handed it to Yi Xian. "This is?" Yi Xian was puzzled. Enlancio said softly, "In the north of the state of Jiang, which is also the location of Two World City, the forces on the mountain discovered a ruin left behind by a sword master. They've almost developed it and they'll be able to enter it in a month at most. This is a certificate of qualification given to me by the higher-ups. With this jade pendant, I'm qualified to enter the ruin. To me, entering it doesn't have any special meaning. You're a swordsman, so it should be of great help to you. Moreover, that place is located in a volcanic area, and there might be something extremely hot underground. If you can obtain it, it should be of great help to your sister. However, you have to be careful. Besides the top 1 or 2 people from the state of Jiang, there will be some top geniuses from other countries going there as well. You can't underestimate them." Yi Xian pondered for a moment before he accepted the jade pendant. Enlancio smiled lightly. "Farewell." She walked into the distance after she finished speaking. "Will we meet again?" Yi Xian suddenly asked. Enlancio stopped. "My footsteps might be very fast." Yi Xian grinned. "I'll surpass you." Enlancio turned to glance at Yi Xian and smiled. "Good luck." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned and disappeared at the end of the Xiao Dao. Yi Xian looked at the beautiful figure in the distance for a long time before he returned to his senses. He flipped his left palm, and in it was the other jade pendant Enlancio gave him. 2 jade pendants. Looking at the 2 jade pendants, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. This smile was a little silly. Since he was young, he and his sister depended on each other for survival. There were very few people who treated him well. Even if there were people who treated him well, they were mostly using him. But Enlancio was different. Yi Xian would never forget someone who treated him well for the rest of his life. A moment later, Yi Xian tightly grasped the 2 jade pendants, turned around and walked up the mountain. He kept smiling a silly smile. P.S. Friends who haven't collected this book, please add it to your bookshelf. Thank you very much to some friends who went to other book review sections to promote this book, and pulled in many readers for this book. Thank you. Also thank you very much to the readers who have been tipping these 2 days. Thank you very much. Love you all. Chapter 41. Well, Yi Xian didn't know what love was and he'd never loved in the past. All he knew was that he really liked being with Enlancio. As for anything else, he'd never thought about it. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving because an old man was standing not too far away from him. It was Elder Ling who'd followed Enlancio earlier. Yi Xian glanced at the old man but didn't say anything. Elder Ling sized up Yi Xian, and then he said in a low voice, "Old man Ling Xiu, one of the young Miss servants." "Missin?" asked Yi Xian. Elder Ling nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Is something the matter, senior?" Elder Ling said in a low voice, "Young Master Yi, what I'm about to say might offend you in any way. I hope you can forgive me." Yi Xian nodded. "Go ahead." Elder Ling said, "Even though the young miss is from the state of Jiang, you should be able to tell that her background isn't simple. To put it bluntly, the people she meets in the state of Jiang might only be able to look up to her in the future, and they might not even have the qualifications to look up to her. Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian nodded. "You're trying to tell me not to get close to her, right?" Elder Ling nodded. "I presume young Master Yi is extraordinary since the young miss thinks so highly of him. However, the young miss isn't just an incomparably monstrous genius. The power behind her is something that young Master Yi can't even imagine. If young Master Yi has any other thoughts about the young miss, then forgive me for being blunt, but young Master Yi might live a very very tiring life or even very very miserable life, and the young miss might be implicated because of you." Yi Xian fell silent. Elder Ling glanced at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, please think about what I'm saying. Farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, the space in front of him suddenly split open, and in the next moment, Elder Ling entered the spatial rift and vanished. Splitting open space. Only those who had reached the Nether Passage realm were capable of such a feat. Above the Qi-resisting realm was the Ascending realm, and above the Ascending realm was the Nether Passage realm. The other party was several realms higher than him, and this Nether Passage realm expert was just a servant. The other party was purposely displaying his strength in front of him. His intentions were very clear. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian slowly walked up the mountain. "Feeling pressured?" the mysterious woman suddenly asked. Yi Xian nodded. The mysterious woman continued, "The fire spirit within your younger sister can only last for a month at most. If you can't find a replacement in a month, then she'll be in great danger. Apart from that, the guy imprisoned on the second floor should be waking up soon. Once it awakens and you haven't found the Tao Law, you'll definitely die. If you die, your sister's fate might be even worse." Yi Xian took a deep breath. "I want to cultivate. I want to become stronger." With that, he quickened his pace. Becoming stronger was for his sister, for himself, for survival, and for the sake of pursuing what he wanted to pursue. It was like how people in the secular world couldn't talk about love without money. How could they talk about living comfortably? Many relationships were built on the foundation of money. Even though it wasn't absolute, most relationships were like that. In next to no time, Yi Xian returned to the storm hall, and his expression instantly changed when he arrived before it. In the distance, Yi Ling sat on the ground and cried incessantly. Mo Yunqi, who had a bloody nose and swollen face, was by Yi Ling's side. At this moment, Mo Yunqi was gesturing to Yi Ling while Yi Ling cried even more fiercely. Yi Xian's expression instantly turned ferocious when he saw this. "How dare you bully my sister?" As soon as he finished speaking, a sword silently condensed in his palm. In the next moment, a powerful pressure accompanied by a faint glow of the sword swept out from his body, and the weeds in front of him were instantly slashed apart by this imposing aura and glow of the sword. One sword to decide life and death. Mo Yunqi was dumbfounded when he saw Yi Xian suddenly going berserk. He was about to speak, but Yi Xian had already rushed towards him with the sword in hand. Mo Yunqi was horrified when he sensed the power of Yi Xian's sword. He didn't dare to take it head-on, so he hurriedly leaped over the wall to escape. However, as soon as he leaped over the wall, it was directly turned into powder. *CK. Mo Yunqi's face twitched when he saw the wall behind him turn into powder. He hurriedly sped up and ran into the distance. Behind him, Yi Xian madly chased after him. Everywhere Yi Xian passed there was a mess. In the main hall, seeing Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi disappear not far away, Yi Ling was stunned, and then she hurriedly ran over. When she ran outside the wall, Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi had already disappeared into the distance. She could only vaguely hear Mo Yunqi's panicked voice. "Big brother. I didn't bully your sister, calm down." However, Mo Yunqi's voice was soon drowned out by the sound of the sword. Yi Ling was stunned. What if Big Brother hurts himself? After saying that, she hurriedly ran to Old Man Ji's courtyard. In the courtyard, Old Man Ji was lying on a recliner, with a wine gourd in his mouth, sleeping soundly. Yi Ling hugged Old Man Ji's arm and shook it vigorously, saying anxiously, "Grandpa Ji, Big Brother is fighting with that guy. Quickly go and take a look." Old Man Ji did not move at all. He was drunk like a puddle of mud. Yi Ling had no choice but to run to Jianji's courtyard. Jianji glanced at Yi Ling, and Yi Ling's face was full of anxiety. "Big Sister Ji, Big Brother is fighting with that person. Do you want to persuade him? I'm afraid Big Brother will hurt himself." Jianji walked in front of Yi Ling. "Do you know how to cook?" Yi Ling nodded subconsciously. Jianji said, "I'm hungry." Yi Ling. Behind the Kanglin Palace, other than a large number of abandoned buildings, there was a mountain range. At this moment, two figures were running wildly in a dense forest in this mountain range. The one in the lead was Mo Yunqi. Above his feet, there were two whirlwinds. With the support of these two whirlwinds, his speed was like a gust of wind, extremely fast. And behind him, there was Yi Xian holding the Ling Shao sword in his hand. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was filled with a ruthless aura. Everywhere he passed, the flowers, plants, and trees were basically cut down. After running for about an hour, Mo Yunqi chose to fight with Yi Xian head-on. However, when Yi Xian used one sword decides life and death, he decisively chose to escape. This was because his iron rod, before it could even get close to Yi Xian's sword, it was directly cut into pieces by Yi Xian's Ling Xiao sword light. It was directly cut into pieces. He could not fight. Mo Yunqi ran madly into the depths of the forest, and behind him Yi Xian chased closely. Just like that, one person ran, the other chased, from night to dawn. At dawn, Missouri Yunqi ran back to the front of the Kanglan Palace. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared behind him. Yi Xian was about to make a move, but Yi Ling, who had been waiting in front of the stone steps all night, hurriedly ran over and hugged Yi Xian. Brother, are you okay? He didn't hurt you, right? Not far away, Mo Yunqi, who was lying on the ground and gasping for breath, heard Yi Ling's words, and he was so angry that he almost breathed his last. At this moment, when he saw Yi Ling, Yi Xian also became slightly more normal. He gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. Are you okay? Yi Ling hurriedly shook his head. I'm fine. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi, who was lying on the ground not far away. The latter's expression changed greatly, and he was extremely vigilant. You don't mess around. I didn't bully your sister. You ask her yourself. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze and he looked at Yi Ling. What happened before? Yi Ling slightly lowered her head and did not speak. What happened? Yi Xian asked softly. Yi Ling softly said, I just remembered the time when I was with brother in the Yi family. At that time, brother picked up a bun and he could not bear to eat it, so he gave it to me. Because of this, brother almost starved to death. As she spoke, tears began to flow down her cheeks. Yi Xian gently hugged Yi Ling. Silly girl, the past is the past. Brother will definitely not let you suffer in the future. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly. Brother can't suffer too much, okay? Yi Xian grinned. Okay, let's try our best to live a good life in the future, okay? Yi Ling raised her head, looked at Yi Xian and smiled through her tears. Okay. Soon Yi Ling fell asleep in Yi Xian's arms. After Yi Xian carried Yi Ling back to the room, he came to the front of the Kanglan Palace, and sat not far away from Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi had a vigilant look on his face. Yi Xian took out a wine gourd and threw it to Mo Yunqi. Sorry? Mo Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian, picked up the wine gourd and took a big gulp and then said, What's the name of the sword technique you used just now? One sword to decide life and death. Yi Xian replied. Mo Yunqi nodded. Very strong, I couldn't block it. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi. There were 2 whirlwinds under your feet, was that a martial technique? Mo Yunqi nodded. 10,000 miles wind chasing technique, mystic lower grade. As he spoke, he laid down on the stone steps. If it wasn't for this martial technique, I would have been killed by your sword just now. Yi Xian also laid down on the stone steps. He held his head with both hands and looked at the distant horizon. Sorry. Mo Yunqi shook his head. It's also my fault. I saw your sister crying, so I teased her and said that you were beaten up by me, so she cried even harder. Yi Xian. At this moment, at the end of their sight, a bald man was walking towards them. The man was about 18 or 19 years old, bald and extremely burly. He was bigger than Mo Yunqi and Yi Xian, and he didn't wear any clothes on his upper body, and his muscles were bulging, looking quite terrifying. There were some bones hanging on the man's neck and some of the bones were still stained with blood. Mo Yunqi said softly, This guy should be our other student. As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. Beat him up? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, You first? Mo Yunqi shrugged. Let's go. As he spoke, he tapped his right foot lightly, and his whole body directly floated out, extremely elegant and extremely fast. This speed made Yi Xian feel ashamed of his inferiority. Very quickly, Mo Yunqi appeared in front of the bald man, and he directly swept his foot towards the bald man's shoulder. The bald man didn't dodge, nor did he dodge. Bang! As a muffled sound rang out, Mo Yunqi was directly pushed back several feet, and his right foot was unceasingly trembling, while the bald man didn't move at all. The bald man looked at Mo Yunqi with an unfriendly expression. Mo Yunqi's expression changed slightly, and he turned to look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Let's go together. Yi Xian walked in front of the bald man, and the bald man was somewhat on guard, but at this moment Yi Xian suddenly cupped his fists. Songlan Academy, welcome. Mo Yunqi looked at Yi Xian in shock. You? The bald man cupped his fists towards Yi Xian. Thank you. As he spoke, he turned to look at Mo Yunqi, who was not far away. Mo Yunqi smiled awkwardly. It's a misunderstanding, a complete misunderstanding. The bald man suddenly rushed towards Mo Yunqi, and Mo Yunqi's expression changed greatly and he turned to run. Yi Xian, you bastard, you sold me out. Chapter 42. Soon, Mo Yunchi's wails could be heard from the mountain. Noon inside the Azure Wave Palace. Old Man Ji sat at the head of the table. He drank wine from time to time and was still drunk. On his left was Ji Anji, who held a pair of chopsticks and slowly licked them. On Old Man Ji's right was the bald man. The bald man held a string of iron beads in his hand. The iron beads were very smooth and shone with a faint light. Obviously they were not made of ordinary materials. Below the bald man was Mo Yunchi. Mo Yunchi looked really miserable. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There were many footprints on his body. And the bald man sitting not far from him looked at him from time to time with an unfriendly expression. At this moment, a fragrant smell wafted over. Old Man Ji opened his eyes. Ji Anji immediately sat up straight and held the long chopsticks in his hand ready to go. Yi Xian and Yi Ling each carried a plate over. Yi Xian carried a plate of roasted chicken. It was golden yellow and looked very tempting. Yi Ling carried a steamed fish. It looked very appetizing. The siblings had just placed the plate on the table when Old Man Ji and Ji Anji started eating. The speed was so fast that it shocked the bald man and Mo Yunchi. Not to mention them, even Yi Xian and Yi Ling were stunned. Old Man Ji was fine, but Ji Anji's eating speed could be described as a bandit. In less than 10 breaths, the roasted chicken in front of Ji Anji was only left with the bones and the fish was only left with the bones. The bald man and Mo Yunchi at the side were dumbfounded, and they had just picked up their chopsticks. Old Man Ji glanced at Ji Anji. Be more reserved. Ji Anji licked his chopsticks and looked at Yi Xian. Is there more? Everyone, after a long time the Azure Wave Palace quietened down. Everyone sat around the table. There were 7 or 8 plates on the table, all clean. The bald man and Mo Yunchi looked like they had nothing left to live for, because they had only eaten a few mouthfuls. Yi Xian and his sister Yi Ling looked at each other and smiled. They were already full when they were in the kitchen. At this time Old Man Ji suddenly said, "Let me introduce you to the newcomer." As he spoke he pointed at the bald man. Bai Zhe from Mount Mang in the north. He has a half-demon body. The bald man called Bai Zhe stood up and bowed slightly to the crowd. However, he cast an unfriendly glance at Mo Yunchi. The corners of Mo Yunchi's mouth twitched, and he glared fiercely at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time Old Man Ji pointed at Mo Yunchi. Mo Yunchi comes from Mo town at the border of the extreme south. He has a light and agile physique, and if he cultivates speed-type martial techniques, he will be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. He is good at using sticks and throwing knives. Flying daggers. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunchi. This guy was hiding something. Mo Yunchi suddenly pointed at Yi Xian. Old man, tell me about him. Old Man Ji glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian from Qingqing's Yi family. He is a swordsman. Great swordsman. Great swordsman. Ji Anji and the bald man glanced at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of surprise and curiosity in their eyes. Great swordsman. This was rare in the entire country of Jiang, especially for such a young great swordsman. Yi Xian. At this time, Mo Yunchi suddenly stood up. He looked at Yi Xian in shock. Big brother, you can't be that trash that Karaki Academy doesn't want, right? You're the trash. Yi Ling suddenly glared at Mo Yunchi. I won't cook for you in the future. At the side, Bai Zhe nodded. Don't let him eat. Mo Yunchi's face twitched. He gently fanned his cheeks and smiled. Little sister, I misspoke. Don't be angry, he finally understood. In this Zhonglan Academy only this pair of siblings knew how to cook. If they didn't cook he could only eat grass in the future. Yi Ling coldly snorted and didn't say anything. Old Man Ji suddenly said. He is the Yi Xian from the Imperial Capital. The Yi Xian from the Imperial Capital. Under Karaki Academy's deliberate propaganda, Yi Xian's reputation in the Imperial Capital was very big. Of course it wasn't a good reputation. Mo Yunchi sized up Yi Xian and shook his head. TSK Karaki Academy is really awesome. They don't even want someone like you. Since when did Karaki Academy have such high requirements? Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Old Man Ji suddenly said. In the back mountain there is a martial arts hall. It used to be a place for Zhonglan Academy students to study. You can go there and have a look. Maybe you will gain something. Do you have martial arts? Mo Yunchi quickly asked. Cultivation methods are fine too. Old Man Ji shook his head. Why? Mo Yunchi was puzzled. Old Man Ji said calmly. I sold them for wine money. Everyone, Old Man Ji stood up. 1.5 years. There is still 1.5 years until the triennial death match between Songlan Academy and Karaki Academy. I don't want your corpses to be hung on Song Mountain's Xiaodao in 1.5 years. Also, don't go out and wander around. If Karaki Academy students see you, they will definitely beat you up. After saying that, he turned and left. Jianji suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Go and make something to eat. Yi Xian. An hour later, after Jianji had eaten her fill, she stood up. Let me give you a friendly reminder. Karaki Academy has 2 peerless geniuses, one male and one female. The male is called Fenju and the female is called Bei Chen. These 2 are not even 20 years old, but they have already reached the ascendant realm. They might even be half a step into the ethereal opening realm. Let me put it this way. In the entire country of Jiang, there is only one person who can suppress them. You should know who this person is. The few people present naturally knew who this person was. Besides Enlancio, who else could it be? Jianji said again. Besides these 2, there are 3 other geniuses under them. The identities of these 3 people are unknown. We only know that each of them has a special ability. Rumor has it that if the 3 of them join forces, they can even fight against Enlancio. At this time, Mo Yunqi raised his right hand and said weakly, is it too late to quit now? Jianji glanced at Mo Yunqi. It's not too late to commit suicide now. Sigh. Mo Yunqi laid on the table and sighed deeply. I've been screwed over by this geezer. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, since everyone is here, I have something to discuss with all of you. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I looked it up earlier. Our academy lacks a lot of daily necessities. For example, we don't even have normal necessities. There are also some other things like toilet paper. In short, we lack everything. Oh my God. Mo Yunqi howled with grief while his head lay on the table, and he had a helpless expression on his face. Yi Xian glanced at them. I've decided to go down the mountain to buy some daily necessities. However, I don't have enough money. All of you should contribute some as well. Let's pool our resources together. Everyone was speechless. When he saw Jianji and the others remain silent, Yi Xian shrugged. It's fine if all of you don't contribute. We'll live our own lives from now on. That's fine, right? The corners of Mo Yunqi and the others' mouths twitched. Live our own lives? Eat grass in the future? A moment later, Bei Zhe took out a bag and handed it to Yi Xian. 20 gold coins. Yi Xian didn't stand on ceremony and kept it. Then he looked at Jianji. The latter just stared at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's scalp to go numb. A moment later, Yi Xian waved his hand. All right. You don't need to contribute anymore. Go do what you need to do. Jianji turned around and left without any hesitation. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yunqi. Just like Jianji, Mo Yunqi also looked at him. Just like that. Yi Xian suddenly slammed the table and shouted angrily, What are you looking at? Hurry up and pay up. Otherwise eat grass. Mo Yunqi was speechless. An hour later, Yi Xian brought his sister down the mountain. To their left and right were Mo Yunqi and Bei Zhe. They had bought quite a lot of things this time. He and his sister Yi Ling definitely couldn't bring so many things, so he dragged Mo Yunqi and Bei Zhe along. Along the way, Yi Ling was lively and very happy. Looking at Yi Ling, Yi Xian's eyes were slightly worried, because the fire spirit had temporarily suppressed the coldness in Yi Ling's body. The fire spirit could last for 2 or 3 months at most. If there was no new replacement after 2 or 3 months, thinking up to there, he took out the black jade pendant Enlancio had given him. The 2 world mountains, the sword master's dwelling. I have to go myself. Yi Xian said softly. On Yi Xian's left, Mo Yunqi had a weed in his mouth and was humming an unknown tune. He seemed rather sloppy. On Yi Xian's right, Bei Zhe walked with his head lowered. He was very silent, or rather, he basically didn't speak at all. At this moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, Speaking of which, are the 2 of you confident in a year and a half? Yi Xian patted Mo Yunqi's shoulder gently. What's there to be afraid of? Just do it. Mo Yunqi gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. Big brother, you make it sound so easy. The problem is, can we win? If we can't, we'll be killed and our corpses will be hung on Song Mountain's Xiaodao. Yi Xian spread his hands. You don't want to do it? Then what should we do? Kneel and beg for mercy at Karaki Academy? Mo Yunqi sighed softly. It's all my fault for being blinded by greed and believing old Manji's words. I was tricked here by him. Sigh, it's all tears. At this point he seemed to have thought of something and he turned to look at Bei Zhe. Big guy, how did you get tricked here? Yi Xian also looked at Bei Zhe. He really wanted to know how Bei Zhe got tricked here. Under normal circumstances, no one would be willing to come here. Bei Zhe hesitated for a moment and then he said, Old man Ji said that my bones are amazing, that I'm naturally intelligent, and that I'm a 1 in a million martial arts prodigy. He said that the peace of the state of Jiang will depend on me in the future. Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi were stunned on the spot. After a moment, Mo Yunqi gulped and then he said, You believe him? Bei Zhe glanced at Yi Xian and nodded, I believe him. Yi Xian. Chapter 43. Hearing Bei Zhe's words, Yi Xian shook his head. In this world there were actually such naive people. Mo Yunqi, on the other hand, looked at Bei Zhe with pity and shook his head. At this moment, Bei Zhe suddenly asked, Am I not a martial arts prodigy? Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi looked at each other, and the two of them walked away quickly. Behind them, Bei Zhe touched his bald head and was a little confused. Soon Yi Xian and the others entered the bustling streets of the imperial capital. Because he had the VIP card of the Drunken Immortal restaurant, Yi Xian went straight to the Drunken Immortal restaurant. If he did not take advantage of the situation, he would be a bastard. Soon the three of them arrived at the busiest area in the center of the city. There was a tall building here with a total of 9 floors. It was extremely luxurious. This building was the famous Drunken Immortal restaurant in Qingzhou. Yi Xian walked in with the 2 coolies, Yi Ling and Mo Yunqi. Soon, a delicate and pretty woman came to greet them. The delicate and pretty woman bowed slightly to them. Is there anything you need? Yi Xian took out his VIP card. When she saw the VIP card, the delicate and pretty woman's face suddenly changed. She bowed deeply again. Distinguished guest, please follow me. Soon, under the lead of the delicate and pretty woman, the 4 of them arrived at a very luxurious private room. As soon as they sat down, someone immediately served good spiritual tea. Before long, an old man walked in. After the old man entered, he bowed slightly to Yi Xian and the others. Finally he looked at Yi Xian. How should I address you, distinguished guest? Yi Xian said, Yi Xian. Yi Xian. The old man was slightly struck dumb when he had heard that. He sized Yi Xian up and down. Soon he was sure. The person in front of him should be Yi Xian, whose name had spread like wildfire in the imperial city. The old man's expression was natural. What instructions does young Master Yi have? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, Give me 300 caddies of rice, 50 chickens, 50 ducks, 10 pigs, 10 cows and 5 barrels of oil. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. The old man in front of Yi Xian was also dumbfounded. Mo Yunqi, who was not far away, sat in the corner and looked at the ceiling as if he didn't know Yi Xian. Bei Zhe's expression was also extremely unnatural. Coming to a place like the Drunken Immortal restaurant to buy these? Who had ever seen anyone come to the Drunken Immortal restaurant to buy rice and oil? After a while, Yi Xian finally finished speaking. However, as if he thought of something, he added, Discount, remember to give me a discount. 50% off. The old man, seeing the old man's expression, Yi Xian frowned. What, you're not selling? The old man smiled bitterly. Young Master Yi, it's not that we don't want to sell, but we don't have these, Yi Xian said indifferently. The person who gave me the card said that if I need anything in the future, I can come to the Drunken Immortal restaurant. As long as my request is not too excessive, the Drunken Immortal restaurant can satisfy it. Alas, it seems that he was bragging to me. Hearing this, the old man's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly bowed deeply. Young Master Yi, please wait a moment. Although we don't have these items in the Drunken Immortal restaurant, there are many of them outside. This old man will immediately prepare them for young Master Yi. Please wait a moment, young Master Yi. Yi Xian nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. The old man bowed, then turned around and left. In the room, only Yi Xian's group of 4 were left. At this moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, This is a purple card. Among the many VIP cards in the Drunken Immortal restaurant, it's only inferior to the black card. You're not simple. Yi Xian smiled and said, It's just a card. Mo Yunqi shook his head. Big brother, a place like the Drunken Immortal restaurant can be said to be the most luxurious and honorable place in the imperial capital. You came to this place to buy meat, rice, oil and salt. You're really shameless. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi lightly. If we don't come to this place and go outside, do we have enough money? Is it not enough for you? Mo Yunqi didn't say anything. Soon the old man walked in. The old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, we've already prepared the things you need. They've been packed in 2 carriages. We've also arranged for servants to escort you all the way. Young Master Yi, do you need anything else? Yi Xian cupped his fists. Thank you very much. And how many gold coins in total? The old man smiled. Just treat it as a free gift. A free gift. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He took out a bag and placed it on the table in front of him. There are 36 gold coins in here. I think it should be enough. Goodbye. After saying that, he pulled Yi Ling and walked out of the door. Bei Zhe and Mo Yunqi hurriedly followed. In the private room, the old man smiled bitterly. He originally wanted Yi Xian to owe him a small favor. But obviously Yi Xian didn't want to owe the drunken immortal restaurant a small favor. After keeping the bag of money, the old man followed them out. In front of the entrance of the drunken immortal restaurant, 2 carriages were already waiting. The carriages were loaded to the brim. Behind the carriages there were 3 huge iron cages. In the iron cages there were some livestock. Fortunately, the drunken immortal restaurant had arranged manpower. Otherwise he really wouldn't be able to bring these things away. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yunqi and Bei Zhe. Let's go. The 2 of them jumped onto the carriage. Yi Xian also jumped onto one of the carriages with Yi Ling. Just like that, the group of people left in a grandiose manner. Behind Yi Xian and the others, the old man looked at the bag of money in his hand and shook his head. Along the way, Yi Xian and the others naturally attracted the attention of others. Because they brought too many things. Yi Xian had no choice. Canglan Academy was very far from the imperial city. It was impossible for him to come here every day. That was too much of a waste of time. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "That's Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Along with this exclamation, the gazes of countless people in the surroundings all turned to look at him. Seeing the surrounding gazes, Yi Xian was a little stunned. Was he that famous? It's really Yi Xian. Someone said, he's the trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. TSK, this Canglan Academy really doesn't care about face. They actually want the trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. No wonder they were suppressed by Kuraki Academy. But I heard that Nguesher seems to think highly of him. Even Nguesher can make a mistake. Look at him, he's only at the Qi transformation realm. He hasn't even reached the Qi controlling realm. This kind of trash doesn't even have the qualifications to be an errand boy in Kuraki Academy. In the field, everyone was talking about Yi Xian without the slightest scruple. Yi Xian was expressionless. Society was like this. Many people like to step on others to show their superiority. Don't talk about my brother. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly glared at the people around her. My brother didn't offend any of you. What right do you have to talk about him? Below, a young man laughed. I want to talk about your brother. Your brother is trash. A trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. How about it? Bite me? Yi Ling was so angry that her face turned red. She angrily pointed at the young man. Brother, hit him. On the carriage, Yi Xian flashed down. The next moment, the young man who spoke before was directly sent flying. This time he flew for a full 5 or 6 feet until he hit a wall. The young man lay on the ground and kept wailing. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His ribs were all broken. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. This Yi Xian publicly hit someone? On the other side, Mo Yunqi watched and shook his head. He finally understood that one could offend this Yi Xian but never, ever offend his sister. Otherwise he would make one regret being born into this world. He actually hit someone in the street. He's too arrogant. Does he still have any respect for the law? Everyone pointed at Yi Xian, but no one dared to make a move. Yi Xian glanced at the people around him and suddenly roared, "Shut up!" The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Yi Xian glanced at the people one by one. Cut the crap. If you don't like me, Yi Xian, then come and hit me. Come on. I'll do it. At this moment, a young man suddenly rushed out from the crowd. However, as soon as he rushed in front of Yi Xian, he was directly sent flying by Yi Xian's fist. Similarly, after the young man smashed to the ground, he was unable to get up again. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. Anyone else? The surroundings were silent. Many people were always like this, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. TSK. Since when did Canglan Academy's dogs dare to be so arrogant in the imperial city? At this moment, suddenly a voice came from the side. Soon, 3 men wearing ink-white robes walked over from afar. It's the students of Kuraki Academy. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Soon the surroundings were boiling. The silent people in the surroundings started to chatter again. Obviously, the appearance of the students of Kuraki Academy gave them great courage. Mo Yunqi's eyes slightly narrowed when he saw the students of Kuraki Academy, and Bei Zhe's expression also turned cold. The 2 of them jumped off the carriage at the same time, and then came to Yi Xian's side. Karaki Academy and Songlan Academy, these two academies could be said to be true enemies. The enmity between the two academies was innate. In the past, as long as the students of the two academies met, nothing good would happen. However, as Songlan Academy declined towards the end, Songlan Academy students would basically avoid Karaki Academy students. The three Karaki Academy students walked in front of Yi Xian's group, and the leading Karaki Academy student sized up Yi Xian and ridiculed. So you're the trash that my Karaki Academy doesn't want? Chi Transformation Realm? TSK Songlan Academy is really declining. Even trash like you. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly flew up and kicked the chest of the man who spoke. Bang! Under the gaze of the crowd, the man's entire body was sent flying, and in the air the man spat out blood. Everyone was stunned. Mo Yunqi and Bei Zhe were also stunned, because they didn't expect Yi Xian to attack. The surroundings were completely silent. When Yi Xian sent the man flying, he quickly whipped out two legs from his left and right, and the remaining two Karaki Academy students were caught off guard and were directly kicked away. Yi Xian didn't stop, he rushed in front of the three people, and then picked up the money bags from their waists. Then he quickly returned to Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe's side. Run! Run! Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe, who were preparing to go all out, were instantly stunned. They thought they had heard wrong. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already carried Yi Ling back to the carriage and then drove away. Beat up people, snatch the things and run, everyone. P.S. Created a reader group, 677540563. Everyone can come in and brag. Chapter 44. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi weren't the only ones who were stunned. Running away after beating someone up? Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi quickly came back to their senses, and the two of them hurriedly followed. Everyone in the surroundings gazed at the three students from Karaki Academy. At this moment, the expressions of the three students were incomparably ferocious. For so many years, when had Karaki Academy ever suffered such a setback? Not only were they beaten up, but they were also robbed by someone from Songlan Academy. It was a great humiliation. The leading student suddenly roared, "Chase after them." After speaking, he directly rushed over. The other two students also followed closely behind. For the three of them, what happened just now was undoubtedly a great humiliation. If they didn't get rid of this humiliation, they would undoubtedly become the laughingstock of the entire Karaki Academy. Not only that, they would also tarnish the reputation of Karaki Academy. For so many years, only Karaki Academy bullied Songlan Academy. When had Karaki Academy ever been bullied by Songlan Academy? Humiliation could only be washed away with blood. The eyes of the three students were filled with cold killing intent. Yi Xian and the others were carrying a lot of things, so their speed was naturally slow. After a while, the three students from Karaki Academy caught up with Yi Xian and the others. Yi Xian stopped and jumped off the carriage. He turned around and looked straight at the three students from Karaki Academy. Soon, the three of them were getting closer and closer to Yi Xian. The leading young man said ferociously, "You bastard, you actually dare." Before he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from his spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of him. At the same time, Yi Xian swept his leg at him. The sweep of his leg tore through the air. The young man's expression changed greatly. In a hurry, he could only hurriedly use his left hand to block it. Bang! Crack! Along with a muffled sound and the sound of bones breaking, the young man's entire body was directly smashed into the wall several meters away. Bang! The wall shook violently and immediately collapsed. Fortunately, the young man's reaction was extremely fast. He rolled backwards and was not buried by the wall. However, as soon as he stopped, a foot stepped on his abdomen. Yi Xian stared coldly at the young man beneath his feet. The young man's eyes were filled with malevolence and madness. "Kill me if you have the ability. Otherwise, I'll kill your entire family." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stepped on the young man's throat. Crack! The young man's voice stopped abruptly as fresh blood flowed ceaselessly from the corner of his mouth. At the moment he breathed his last, his eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. When they saw Yi Xian kill, the other two students of Karaki Academy were finally slightly panicked. The reason why they dared to chase after Yi Xian's group without the slightest scruple was because they had the confidence. In their hearts, the students of Songlan Academy wouldn't dare to kill them no matter what. However, reality told them that they were wrong. The two of them had already started to slowly retreat. Right now they no longer cared about shame. They only wanted to live. On the other side, Mo Yunqi and Bei Zhe's expressions were slightly solemn. If it was said to be a small fight earlier, then it wasn't a small fight now. They were in big trouble. Nearby, after Yi Xian killed the young man, he turned around and leaped onto his horse. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he held tightly onto Yi Ling's hand and clamped the carriage between his legs as it moved towards the distance. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi hurriedly followed after him. After around 10 minutes, a group of men in ink-white robes arrived where Yi Xian's group was earlier. When they saw the young man's corpse on the ground not too far away, their expressions instantly became ferocious. The leader of this group was a man who held a black spear. The man had slanted brows, starry eyes, and a slender figure. He could be said to be a handsome man. This man was one of the 3 great geniuses of Kuraki Academy's outer court, Zhuo Li. Senior Zhuo Li. A nearby student of Kuraki Academy spoke in a ferocious voice. These students of Zhonglan Academy are really audacious. They actually dared to kill a student of our Kuraki Academy in broad daylight. Senior Zhuo Li, I request for permission to fight to the death. I'm willing to take my own life before the academy if I don't annihilate all the students of Zhonglan Academy. As soon as he finished speaking, he intended to charge out, but he was stopped by a spear. All the students looked at Zhuo Li in succession. Zhuo Li glanced at the end of the street. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Today I'll annihilate Zhonglan Academy. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Moreover, there were over 20 students of Kuraki Academy behind him. At a certain place in the wilderness, Yi Xian's group was dashing madly on the carriage. On the way, Mo Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian. Weren't you a bit too impulsive earlier? Yi Xian said indifferently, I gave him a chance to live. Mo Yunqi fell silent. Yi Xian continued, if we don't kill him, he will pursue us relentlessly. Moreover, if we give him a chance, he won't show us any mercy, right? Bai Zhe suddenly nodded. Yes, he deserves to be killed. Mo Yunqi smiled bitterly. He deserves to be killed, but what should we do after killing him? Kuraki Academy will definitely not let this matter rest. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi. I'll fight the young one, and old man Ji will fight the old one. What if we can't win? Mo Yunqi asked. Yi Xian shrugged his shoulders. If we can't win, then we can't win. What else can we do? Mo Yunqi still wanted to say something, but Bai Zhe, who was beside him, suddenly said, Can you stop talking nonsense? Mo Yunqi was speechless. At this moment, the 3 of them suddenly turned around. Behind them, a group of people was chasing after them. Students of Kuraki Academy. Seeing those people, Yi Xian's expression was indifferent. He retracted his gaze and looked at Mo Yunqi, who was not far away. Do me a favor, bring my sister back to Zhonglan Academy. Yi Ling wanted to say something, but after being glared at by Yi Xian, he obediently remained silent. Mo Yunqi glanced behind him and then he grabbed Yi Ling. In the next moment, 2 whirlwinds appeared under his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he and Yi Ling were already several tens of feet away. Yi Xian looked at Bai Zhe, who was beside him. You should leave too. Bai Zhe shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. This matter was caused by me. Bai Zhe shook his head again. They targeted Zhonglan Academy. Without you, they would still target me and Mo Shirao. Yi Xian smiled and did not say anything. He jumped off the carriage and walked towards the group of Kuraki Academy students. Beside him was Bai Zhe. Seeing the group of Zhonglan Academy students rushing over, Yi Xian's expression gradually turned sinister. Fighting was the thing that Yi Xian was least afraid of in this lifetime. His realm and strength weren't obtained through cultivation but through fighting. Especially when he had just become the young master of the Yi clan, he practically had to fight to the death with the members of the other clans on the streets every single day. To him, fighting had become a common occurrence. Zhuo Li suddenly raised his spear. Behind him, the group of people stopped and Zhuo Li said coldly, I alone am enough. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stomped his right foot. Bang! The ground instantly collapsed. At the same time, a stream of air suddenly rose beneath his feet, and in the blink of an eye, Zhuo Li charged towards Yi Xian and Bai Zhe like a bolt of lightning. Qi controlling realm. Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and at the instant he stopped, Zhuo Li's spear had already arrived before him. His body suddenly leaned backwards like a piece of paper, and he directly dodged the spear. At the same time, his right foot suddenly kicked upwards. Bang! The spear in Zhuo Li's hand trembled violently, and he was pushed over 3 back. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian pounced towards him like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. Zhuo Li's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly swept the spear in his hand. Total annihilation. This sweep directly tore the air apart, and an explosion suddenly resounded. A wisp of a savage smile arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. He didn't dodge but instead clenched his right hand tightly into a fist, and then he blasted it forward. Fist crush. Under the enhancement of battle intent, this low-level martial technique had completely surpassed the might of a low-level martial technique. The fist and spear collided. Bang. Along with the sound of an explosion, Zuoli's entire body was pushed back over 10 along with his spear. In the process of his retreat, his feet had forcefully carved out 2 deep trenches on the ground. As soon as Zuoli stopped, Yi Xian had charged in front of him once more. At the same time, Yi Xian blasted another fist towards him. It was the same fist crush. There was no technique at all. It was just a simple punch that was direct and violent. It was direct and forceful. Zuoli's pupils constricted when he sensed the strength within Yi Xian's fist. He didn't dare act carelessly, and the energy within his body surged madly into the spear in his hand before he stabbed it forward. The spear and sword flickered with a cold light as they stabbed forward. At the same time, a sharp and ear-piercing sound of something being torn apart resounded. It was the sound of the spear tearing through the air. Under the gazes of everyone, the fist and spear collided in the most violent manner possible. Bang! As soon as they collided, both Yi Xian and Zuoli retreated explosively at the same time. But in next to no time, Yi Xian stopped while Zuoli was still retreating explosively. At the same time, Yi Xian charged towards Zuoli once more. This time, Zuoli didn't have the time to deal with it. Yi Xian's fist smashed onto Zuoli's chest. Boom! A mouthful of blood essence sprayed out from Zuoli's mouth, and then his figure arched as he flew backwards. Right when Yi Xian was about to attack again, the group of students from Kuraki Academy behind Zuoli suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. A ferocious glow instantly appeared in Bei Zai's eyes when he witnessed this scene, and in the next moment he charged towards that group of people. At the instant he charged over, every single step he took left a deep footprint on the ground. On the other hand, Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all, and he charged directly towards that group of people. He wasn't afraid of a one-on-one battle, and he wasn't afraid of a group battle either. Wait for me. Right at this moment, a voice resounded from behind Yi Xian and Bei Zai. It was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi was like a gust of wind as he attacked from afar. He was extremely swift, and he arrived by Yi Xian and Bei Zai's side in the blink of an eye. Mo Yunqi gazed at the 20+ people that were charging over from afar, and he laughed savagely as he said, "Can they kill us?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "Do you think they will kill us?" Mo Yunqi laughed heartily and said, "I actually asked such a stupid question. Kill them. Let them know that from today onwards, our Zhonglan Academy isn't so easily bullied." As his voice fell, he suddenly clasped his hands together, and the moment he separated them, 2 cold lights flashed out from his palms. Flying dagger. In the distance, the heads of 2 students from Kuraki Academy directly flew out. But in the next moment, Mo Yunqi was directly sent flying by a student from Kuraki Academy, but in the next instant, that student's head was instantly blasted apart by Yi Xian's punch. But very quickly, another student from Kuraki Academy directly collided with Yi Xian's body. Chapter 45. A group fight. The battlefield was a mess. Even though Yi Xian's group of 3 were formidable, Kuraki Academy had the advantage in numbers. So, when the battle started, Yi Xian's group of 3 didn't gain much of an advantage. After all, any student that was able to join Kuraki Academy wasn't trash. However, Kuraki Academy didn't gain much of an advantage, and it should be said that they were in a very miserable state. Because up until now, 6 or 7 students from Kuraki Academy had died miserably. Bang! After Yi Xian blasted a student flying with a single punch, he was just about to follow up with another attack when a spear tore through the sky towards him. It was Zuoli. Yi Xian stopped moving. He didn't dodge and he allowed Zuoli's spear to stab into his chest. Bang! Yi Xian retreated by over 3 However, Zuoli's expression changed violently because Yi Xian had used his body to forcefully block his spear. This was something he hadn't expected, and since he hadn't expected this, then the consequences would naturally be severe. Sure enough, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Zuoli's spear, and in the next moment he pressed forward along the spear and suddenly struck his knee against Zuoli's stomach. Bang! Zuoli's entire body was instantly blasted flying by over 10 Bang! Zuoli crashed to the ground while blood sprayed from his mouth, and the internal organs in his stomach had been shattered by Yi Xian's knee strike. Yi Xian walked over to Zuoli, and then Zuoli raised his head to look at Yi Xian with an extremely savage expression. I underestimated you. But after we die today, the Academy won't underestimate you anymore. As he spoke, he suddenly roared furiously towards the surroundings. Let's go. At this moment, all the students from Kuraki Academy in the surroundings stopped, and they intended to charge at Yi Xian when they saw Zhuo Li's appearance. Yi Xian coldly looked at those people and they immediately stopped. It wasn't that they were afraid of Yi Xian, but they were afraid that Yi Xian would kill Zhuo Li. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi walked to the left and right of Yi Xian. Both of them had different degrees of injuries, especially Mo Yunqi. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, and there were many cracks on Bai Zhe's upper body. The weakest of these students from Kuraki Academy were at least in the Qi-controlling realm. Moreover, they were not ordinary Qi-controlling realm cultivators. The fact that the three of them were able to survive after fighting against 20 of them was already extremely terrifying. In front of Yi Xian, Zhuo Li slowly stood up, and once again roared at the students of Kuraki Academy, "Run!" He was no fool. After a round of battle, he already knew that he and the others had severely underestimated the strength of the three people in front of him. If they continued fighting, they would all be sacrificed in vain. In the surroundings, not a single one of the Kuraki Academy students tried to escape. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned and walked away. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi glanced at Zhuo Li, whose internal organs had been severely injured by Yi Xian, and then turned and left as well. At this moment, Zhuo Li suddenly laughed sinisterly. "What? Are you going to humiliate me? I, a student of Kuraki Academy, would rather die than be humiliated by a student of Zhonglan Academy." As soon as he finished speaking, under everyone's gaze, Zhuo Li's right hand clenched into a fist, and then he suddenly punched his throat. Crack. His bones shattered and Zhuo Li's body stiffened on the spot. Senior Zhuo Li. In the surroundings, all the students of Kuraki Academy rushed to Zhuo Li's corpse, and their tears flowed down. Not far away beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Damn it, it's as though the three of us are the bad guys. Who the hell is the bully here?" Bai Zhe rubbed his upper body and soon the cracks on his body began to gradually recover. He glanced at Yi Xian who was beside him. "Your fleshly body is formidable." During the battle earlier, he noticed that Yi Xian's fleshly body wasn't inferior to his at all. Yi Xian said in a light voice, "You're formidable as well." This wasn't a compliment. Up until now, amongst the younger generation, only Bai Zhe was comparable to him in terms of fleshly body. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian's group of three. The middle-aged man wore a golden silk robe, and on the left side of his chest, there was the symbol of Kuraki Academy. Yi Xian recognized this person. It was Li Xiu, the vice dean of Kuraki Academy. Things have gotten out of hand. But it was normal, someone had already died, so things had definitely gotten out of hand. Li Xiu stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "You want to leave after killing someone?" Yi Xian laughed with ridicule. "Kill someone? What? Only your Kuraki Academy students are allowed to kill someone, but my Zhonglan Academy students are not allowed to? Or are you saying that Kuraki Academy has no more students, and you want the dignified vice dean to come out and take revenge?" Li Xiu sneered. "Goading me? Don't worry, I won't bully you." As he spoke, he turned to look at a rock in the distance, and there, an old man was lying on it. This person was none other than Old Man Ji. The corner of Li Xiu's mouth gradually turned malevolent. "Old Man Ji, from this moment onwards, I declare war on Zhonglan Academy." "War?" Right at this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly stood up, and in the next moment, under everyone's gaze, he plucked a weed beside him and casually threw it away. Li Xiu's expression changed greatly, and he suddenly clasped his hands together. In an instant, a formless aura appeared around him, and at the same time, a powerful force surged out from his hands like a tidal wave. Yi Xian and the other two were directly blasted away by this force. At this moment, under the astonished gazes of Yi Xian and the other two, the weed was like a sharp sword, directly piercing through the force released by Li Xiu, and even the aura released by Li Xiu instantly vanished without a trace. Li Xiu's right arm was directly sent flying. The surroundings fell silent. Witnessing this scene, Yi Xian and the other two were dumbstruck. Mo Yunqi gulped. "This old man is so amazing. Next time when we speak to him, should we be more respectful?" Yi Xian was also slightly shocked. This old man's strength was truly terrifying. He was probably slightly stronger than the third master of the Drunken Immortal Inn. In the distance, Old Man Ji glanced at Li Xiu. "War? Are you sure?" Li Xiu stared fixedly at Old Man Ji, and his expression was extremely unsightly. Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine and shook his head. Do you know why Songlan Academy still hasn't collapsed? As he spoke, he pointed at himself. Because of me, as long as I don't die, Songlan Academy will not close its doors. If you want to start a war, fine, I'll let you kill these 3 little fellows, but this old man guarantees your Kuraki Academy that your Kuraki Academy students below the age of 30 will not live to see tomorrow's sun. If you don't believe me, then feel free to come. Anyway, these 3 fellows here are picked up, I don't care. Hearing this, Yi Xian and the other 2 almost went berserk. Picked up? Motherf asterisk her. Mo Yunchi glared at Old Man Ji. Beat him up? Yi Xian looked at Mo Yunchi. You go first? Go your ass. Mo Yunchi glared at Yi Xian. You want to sell me out again? Yi Xian said seriously. Big brother, next time when you want to beat someone up, can you have some idea? Can't you fight when you can't win? Don't King fight when you can't win. This isn't beating people up, this is asking for a beating. Mo Yunchi. At this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly looked at Yi Xian and the other 2. What are you still mumbling about? Let's go. Mo Yunchi and Bai Zhe were about to leave, but at this time Yi Xian suddenly said, Wait. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian walked to the corpses of the Kuraki Academy students. One by one he collected the money pouch and weapons from the waist of the corpses, but he didn't collect Zuoli's. Seeing Yi Xian's actions, everyone was stunned. Old Man Ji directly lied down, pretending to be dead. Not far away, Mo Yunchi hurriedly walked to Yi Xian's side. He pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve. Big brother, can't you have some face? There are so many people watching. Yi Xian glared at him. Face? Do you want to eat or eat grass? Mo Yunchi didn't say anything. He obediently returned to Bai Zhe's side. Mo Yunchi covered his face with both hands, shaking his head. Shameful. Shameful. Just like this, under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian collected 8 to 9 money pouches and 5 to 6 weapons. He glanced at those weapons. They weren't ordinary, they could be sold for a good price. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Bai Zhe and Mo Yunchi not far away. What are you waiting for? Come over and help set up the carriage. The 2 of them didn't move. Yi Xian said calmly, You can eat grass tonight. Mo Yunchi hurriedly ran over, then jumped onto one of the carriages. Bai Zhe hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked over. Just like this, under the gaze of the Kuraki Academy students, Yi Xian and the other 2 slowly set up the carriage, heading into the distance. Old Man Ji didn't leave, instead lying on the rocks as if he had fallen asleep. Li Xiu stared at Old Man Ji. Today isn't the end, it's the beginning. After saying that, he turned around and left with the group of Kuraki Academy students. On the rocks, Old Man Ji still had his eyes closed, snoring. What happened between Kuraki Academy and Songlan Academy, like a plague, instantly spread throughout the imperial capital. The entire imperial capital was shocked. Songlan Academy students killed Kuraki Academy students. How many years has it been since something like this happened? Could it be that Songlan Academy was going to rise? For a moment, the entire imperial capital was in a heated discussion. Country of Zhang's imperial palace, Yangxin Palace. A middle-aged man dressed in a luxurious robe looked at the secret report in his hand. Looking at it, the middle-aged man suddenly chuckled. The middle-aged man got up and walked to the entrance of the hall, looking up at the horizon. Little Nine's secret report says that the youth who dared to face thousands of Tang's black-armored cavalrymen alone in Two World City has come to the imperial capital. He's that Yi Xian who's the talk of the town now. In a corner of the hall, a woman's voice suddenly sounded. I've already looked up his information. He's from Qingqing, grew up with his younger sister when his parents weren't around, and devoted himself to the Yi family, but was abandoned by the Yi family in the end. In order to treat his younger sister's illness, he brought her to the imperial capital. The middle-aged man glanced at the corner and smiled. This should be what's on the surface. In the corner, a wheelchair slowly slid out, and in the wheelchair sat a woman in a black dress. She looked very young and very beautiful, but her hair was snow white. Apart from that, her eyes were closed and they had been closed all this time. The woman in the black dress said softly, and Guosher treated him differently, and he came out unscathed after killing an elder of the drunken immortal abode on the cloud ship. There's no way to find out the details. The middle-aged man said with a smile, it's not easy to survive after killing an elder of the drunken immortal abode. With that, he walked back to the desk and took out a golden round plate. Then he took out a golden brush and wrote the word Yi on the front of the round plate. And behind the round plate there were 2 words, Guosher. The middle-aged man suddenly turned to look at the woman. You don't object? The woman asked, "Why should I object? There's no harm in it." The middle-aged man laughed and said, "Nowadays many young people only care about their own little plans, especially those from aristocratic families and academies. In their hearts there's only their families and academies. Country? They don't have a country in their hearts." At that time, that youth dared to stand up against the Tang army without any interest or purpose. Just based on this he deserves the title of Guosher. With that, he turned to look at the woman in the black dress. "I'll have to trouble Nation Master Lu to go to Kanglin Academy for me." Chapter 46. Songlan Academy, Songlan Hall. Inside the hall, everyone sat around the table. Yi Xian and his sister would occasionally bring a dish to the table. None of the dishes were particularly exquisite, but they smelled especially fragrant and appetizing. At the side, Jianji licked his chopsticks. He wanted to eat a few times but was stopped by Old Man Ji, Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi. If this woman were to eat now, they wouldn't even have a bone to chew on. After a while, all the dishes were finally served. 12 dishes. There were meat and vegetables. Yi Ling obediently scooped a bowl of rice for everyone, then sat beside Yi Xian. Old Man Ji took a sip of wine. "I was too impulsive today." Everyone was silent. Yi Xian thought for a moment. "They want to bully us." Old Man Ji said, "We can endure it for a while." Yi Xian asked, "Will they let us go if we endure it?" He shook his head. "No, the more we endure, the more they will be annoyed. When I was in Qingqing I met some people. They are very fierce and fierce. The weaker you are, the more they will bully you. Only by fighting with them and hurting them will they respect you and not dare to bully you easily." Old Man Ji was silent. Mo Yunqi was silent. Jianji only cared about eating. At this moment Bai Zhe suddenly said, "He's right. When I was in Mount Mang I often fought with demonic beasts. When you meet a demonic beast you must not run. The more you run, the more ferocious it will be and the more likely it will attack you. You can only fight with it until it is afraid. The next time it sees you, it will not dare to bully you easily and will even retreat." As he said that, he raised the wine glass beside his bowl and pointed it at Yi Xian. "Well done." Yi Xian also raised his wine glass. He glanced at Mo Yunqi, who thought for a moment and also raised his wine glass. The three of them looked at each other and drank it in one gulp. They did not know each other before, but now they had a common identity. They were students of Songlan Academy. Old Man Ji did not say anything else and started eating. The surrounding people were like the reincarnation of hungry ghosts. In less than a quarter of an hour, all the food on the table had been swept clean. After eating, Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine and said, "Come to the back mountain at midnight tonight." With that he turned around and left. Jianji put down her chopsticks and glanced at Yi Xian. "Can you make more?" The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He pointed to the side and said, "I left some for you in the pantry." Jianji nodded. "Thank you." After saying that, she picked up her chopsticks and turned to leave. Yi Ling cleverly put away the bowls and chopsticks on the table, while Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi ran away after eating. Washing dishes and whatnot was killing them. Seeing the two of them running away, Yi Ling covered her mouth and chuckled. Yi Xian was a little helpless. He helped clean up and said, "Let's go, I'll help you wash up." Just as Yi Ling was about to speak, there was a sudden sound outside the hall. Yi Xian turned around and a wheelchair appeared outside the hall. A woman in a black dress was sitting in the wheelchair. "Want to talk?" the woman in the black dress suddenly said. Yi Xian pointed to himself. "Me?" The woman in the black dress nodded. Yi Ling smiled sweetly at Yi Xian. "Brother, you go. I'll clean up." Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "Be careful." Yi Ling nodded and walked to the side with the bowls and chopsticks. Yi Xian walked to the woman in the black dress. "What's the matter?" The woman in the black dress stretched out her right hand and a golden disc flew in front of Yi Xian. "This is..." Yi Xian was puzzled. The woman in the black dress said, "By the order of the king, you are conferred the title of Kingdom Knight." Kingdom Knight. Yi Xian was stunned. A moment later Yi Xian shook his head and returned the disc. "I didn't do anything to deserve a reward." The woman in the black dress did not take it. "You fought against the Tang army in Two World City." Yi Xian smiled. "That's all?" The woman in the black dress did not speak. Yi Xian sat in front of the stone steps. "That was a long time ago. But now you're conferring me the title of Kingdom Knight. Forgive me for being straightforward, but you have other motives, don't you?" The woman in the black dress was still silent. Yi Xian continued, Now that I've joined the Kanglin Academy and had a conflict with the Kuraki Academy? Let me guess. If I'm not wrong, the royal family doesn't want the Kuraki Academy to be the only big school in the Jiang country. Because the bigger and stronger the Kuraki Academy is, the more disadvantageous it is for the royal family and the imperial power. But now, you see that the Kanglin Academy seems to have the ability to fight against the Kuraki Academy, so you want to pull them together so that the two academies will fight to the death. Am I right? The woman in the black dress crossed her fingers on her lap. You're much smarter than I thought. Yi Xian looked straight at the woman in the black dress. I don't want to be used. The woman in the black dress shook her head. From the moment you joined the Kanglin Academy, you were destined to bear the hatred between the Kanglin Academy and the Kuraki Academy. There's no right or wrong in a feud, only a matter of position. As you said, the Jiang country does hope that someone can balance the Kuraki Academy, but this is not the real reason for conferring you the title of Kingdom Knight. Yi Xian walked in front of the woman in the black dress. Then what's the real reason? The woman in the black dress raised her head. She still did not open her eyes. There's someone who dared to face the Tang Empire's black armored cavalry alone outside the two-world city. Yi Xian was silent. The woman in the black dress suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's right hand, and then placed the golden disc in his palm. Whether it's the Kanglin Academy or the Kuraki Academy, everyone is actually from the Jiang country. Unfortunately, many people forget this point. Only those who have the country in their hearts and the ability to do so can be called a kingdom scholar. You are worthy of this title, and this title will not restrict you. On the contrary, in the future, you will be able to obtain the help of the country wherever you go. After saying that, a mysterious person appeared behind the woman in the black dress. The mysterious person pushed the woman in the black dress and left. After the mysterious person pushed the woman down the mountain, they suddenly stopped. Not far in front of them, there was a drunk old man lying on the ground. The woman in the black dress bowed slightly. Old G. Old G still did not speak. The woman in the black dress continued, although he has the intention to use you, the king has no malice. Old G turned his body sideways. The news of him being a kingdom knight must not be spread out. The current him can't afford to bear too much attention. The woman in the black dress bowed slightly. Understood, thank you. After saying that, the mysterious person pushed the woman in the black dress away. Old Ji was sleeping soundly. In the middle of the night it was midnight. Yi Xian, Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi arrived at the back of the mountain. There was a waterfall at the back of the mountain. The waterfall was over 10 feet wide and the water was extremely fast. At this moment Old Ji and Ji Anji were already waiting there. Mo Yunqi chuckled. Old Ji, are you going to teach us some peerless martial skill? At this moment Old Ji whistled. In the next moment, a pitch-black wolf suddenly ran out from the distant forest. The wolf was several feet tall, and its fur was like sharp swords. Its eyes emitted a chilling murderous light. Demon Wolf. Bai Zai's expression was incomparably vigilant. High Sky Realm. Old Ji pointed at Mo Yunqi. The latter was stunned. Old Ji, what do you mean? At this moment the demon wolf directly rushed towards Mo Yunqi. Its speed was so fast that even Yi Xian could only see an afterimage. Damn it! Old Ji, are you crazy? Mo Yunqi turned around and ran. His speed was also very fast, comparable to the demon wolf. However, in terms of physical strength, Mo Yunqi definitely could not compare to a demon beast. At this moment Old Ji suddenly looked at Bai Zai. Bai Zai puffed out his chest, his eyes fearless. The thing he was least afraid of was demon beasts. In Mount Mang he fought with demon beasts every day. Old Ji suddenly grabbed Bai Zai. Bai Zai subconsciously wanted to resist, but when he exerted force he was shocked to find that he could not exert any strength at all. Under Yi Xian's astonished gaze, Old Ji put a metal chain on Bai Zai's feet that was as thick as an arm. Then he suddenly threw Bai Zai towards the waterfall in the distance, and Bai Zai's entire body directly smashed into the waterfall. At this moment, another demon wolf appeared. That demon wolf leaped to the side of the waterfall. It grabbed a metal chain on the mountain wall and pulled it down with force. In the waterfall, Bai Zai's entire body went against the flow of the waterfall. The powerful impact of the water instantly created red marks on Bai Zai's upper body. At first it was still fine, but after 2 or 3 times, there were cries of pain coming from the waterfall. Not to mention Bai Zai, even Yi Xian felt his scalp tingle. His physical body was also strong, but the water was too fast. Coupled with the fact that he was going against the flow, the water was even more terrifying than a knife's edge. At this moment Old Ji looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This guy's training was a little abnormal. Old Ji sized up Yi Xian then shook his head. In the entire imperial capital, in terms of foundation apart from that in Guosher, you are not inferior to anyone. Yi Xian laughed awkwardly. It's just SOSO, just SOSO. Old Ji fell silent. He seemed to be in a dilemma. This guy's foundation was too good, and he could not forcefully increase his realm. After a while, Old Ji suddenly asked, "Have you comprehended battle intent?" Yi Xian nodded. Old Ji nodded. "Then it's easy." As he said that, he turned and walked to the side. "Follow me." Yi Xian hurriedly followed, and Jianji also followed closely behind. Soon, under Old Ji's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of a small mountain. The mountain was not particularly big, but it was not small either. In any case, it was at least 10 times bigger than the Kanglan Palace. Old Ji pointed at the small mountain in front of them. "What is your best fist technique?" Yi Xian said, "Fist collapse. It's only a low-level martial technique." Old Man Ji pointed at the small mountain in front of him. "Use your fist to smash this mountain. Hit it with all your might until it crumbles." Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. "Is there a problem?" Old Ji asked. Yi Xian gulped, then pointed at the small mountain. "Old Ji, are you drunk tonight? Why don't we talk about cultivation tomorrow?" Old Ji looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally he turned around. "Take your sister and leave." After saying that, he walked into the distance. "Yes, I'll fight." At this moment Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'll fight now." After saying that, he rushed towards the small mountain in the distance. Bang bang bang. Chapter 47. Punching a mountain? In the past, Yi Xian didn't even dare to think of such a thing. But now he was doing it. He and his sister had to stay at Songlan Academy. Firstly, this old man Ji could cure his sister. Secondly, if they left now, they would lose old man Ji's protection. Their fates would be miserable. He had to stay here. For his sister, he could even flatten 10 mountains, let alone one. Looking at Yi Xian punching the mountain again and again in the distance, Jianji suddenly said, "You should ask them to leave." Old man Ji shook his head. "If they leave now, they will die." Jianji said, "We shouldn't have let them come." Old man Ji looked at Jianji. "Yes, coming here means going against Songmu Academy. But isn't coming here also an opportunity for them? Moreover, if they didn't meet me, their lives would be much more miserable than they are now." Jianji was silent. Old Ji looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. No matter why they came to the Songlan Academy in the past, they are now students of the Songlan Academy, and they regard themselves as students of the Songlan Academy. So, I will be responsible for them till the end. With that, he turned and walked away. But after a few steps, he collapsed to the side, drunk. Jianji didn't help him up. She was already used to it. She turned and looked into the distance. Yi Xian was still punching the mountain in a frenzy. But compared to the entire mountain, he didn't even destroy a corner. On the contrary, his hands were already a bloody mess. Jianji shook his head and left. Just like old man Ji said, since they were students of Songlan Academy, if they weren't strong enough, they would inevitably add a corpse to Xiaodao Songmu Academy in the future. Under the night sky, Yi Xian punched again and again, asking in his heart, "Senior, is this method effective?" The mysterious woman didn't answer. Yi Xian asked twice more, but the mysterious woman still didn't answer. Helpless, he could only continue punching. Was it painful? Of course it was. Although he was already at the golden body realm and his physical body was much stronger than ordinary martial artists, it did not mean that he was invincible. However, he did not doubt old man Ji's method. Although he did not know the meaning of doing this, he knew that he would find out soon. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already dawn. Yi Xian stopped, and just as he stopped, old man Ji appeared in front of him. Old man Ji threw him a bag of herbs. "Crush them and use them on your fists and arms." With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian opened the bag of herbs and crushed them. Then he applied them on his arms. The moment the herbs came into contact with his skin, he jumped up in pain. When those herbs came into contact with his skin, it was like a piece of red-hot iron was placed on his skin. It was extremely painful. But fortunately, he forcefully endured it. Because he realized that the injuries on his hands were slowly healing. Actually, this little bit of pain was not a big deal to him. After all, when he was cultivating the hidden realm, the golden body realm, the pain he suffered was truly unforgettable. Now that he thought about it, he felt a lingering fear. A moment later, Yi Xian looked at his arms. At this moment, his arms were red like a piece of red iron. He turned around and charged towards the small mountain again. Bang bang bang, Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the surroundings. Just like that, the explosions lasted until noon before they stopped. It was time for lunch. Yi Xian came to the waterfall to wash up. Just as he was about to leave, a figure floated up from below the waterfall. It was Baizhe. At this moment, a layer of Baizhe's skin had already been peeled off. A layer of skin had truly been peeled off. It was a terrible sight to behold. Baizhe crawled over to the rock and tossed a bag of herbs to Yi Xian. Help! Help me! Yi Xian picked up the bag and walked over to Baizhe, and then he crushed the herbs within the bag. After that, he applied the herbs on Baizhe's body. Baizhe sucked in a breath of cold air and almost cried out, but he forcefully held it in. However, his entire body was trembling. As he watched Baizhe's injuries heal slowly, Yi Xian said softly, "This medicine is not bad." Baizhe took a deep breath and said, "Of course. This is an excellent spirit herb, and a single leaf can be sold for at least 50 gold coins." Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and he looked at the remaining herbs in his hand. "Really?" Baizhe nodded. "Of course." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Why don't we stop applying it and sell it instead?" "Big brother. Don't joke around, 50-50? Hurry up and apply it, 70/30? Can I beat you to death?" An hour later, Yi Xian and Baizhe returned to the Canglan Palace. At the entrance of the Canglan Palace, there was a man lying on the ground. It was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi was lying there, and both his legs were twitching like pendulums. Last night he was chased by the demon wolf for an entire night, and his legs were almost broken. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi and then turned to leave. An hour later, everyone sat around the table. Today the atmosphere was slightly different. When Yi Ling served everyone their food, Mo Yunqi immediately began to sweep the table. Baizhe hesitated for a moment before he began to sweep the table. Yi Xian also ate well. After cultivating for an entire night, firstly he was tired and secondly he was hungry. Seeing Yi Xian wolfing down the food, Yi Ling's heart ached. She quickly scooped a bowl of soup for Yi Xian, and then she lightly patted Yi Xian's back. "Big brother, eat slowly, don't choke." Not far away, Mo Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian and his sister, and then he sighed softly. "Why are other people's sisters so obedient but our own?" Sigh. After saying that, he continued to bury his head in the food. At this moment, old man Ji stood up. "From today onwards, you are not allowed to go down the mountain." After saying that, he turned and left. "What?" Mo Yunqi suddenly asked. Old man Ji did not stop. "If you want to die, go down." Mo Yunqi looked at Ji Anji, who licked his chopsticks. "Some students from Karaki College have arrived at the foot of the mountain, and they are waiting for you to go down the mountain every day." Mo Yunqi sneered. "What are you afraid of?" Ji Anji glanced at Mo Yunqi. "You can beat one, but can you beat 10? Moreover, I heard that there are disciples from the inner court. In short, don't underestimate Karaki College. Last time they looked down on you and you caught them off guard. But now it won't happen again. Those who dare to come will not be trash. Of course, if you feel that cultivating is boring and want to find something more exciting, you can go down the mountain and fight with them." After saying that, she stood up and went to the kitchen. Because every time Yi Xian would leave a portion of food for her. After the meal, Yi Xian changed into a new set of clothes and went on to Blasting Mountain. Baizhe, on the other hand, returned to the waterfall. As for Mo Yunqi, he entered the mountain, and behind him was the demon wolf. At the back of the mountain, Yi Xian punched the mountain in front of him again and again. Every time he punched, he would use his own fighting spirit. At first, everything was normal, but gradually he found that his fighting spirit seemed to have become stronger. Not only his fighting spirit, but even the power of his punches had become stronger. After discovering this, Yi Xian was delighted. Obviously, this cultivation method was very effective. Therefore he worked even harder. Just like that, Yi Xian and the other two cultivated like this day after day passed. Every day, there would be students from Kuraki College coming to the foot of Canglan College's mountain. At first, they were just waiting for Yi Xian and the others to go down the mountain, but gradually they found that Yi Xian and the others did not seem to have the slightest intention of going down the mountain. Therefore, some people began to go up the mountain in groups. The leader was a man in a brocade robe. He was about 20 years old, tall, and had two short sabers hanging from his waist. This person was one of the three geniuses of Kuraki College's outer court, Chen Yan. And behind Chen Yan, there were 6 Kuraki College students. Each of them was at the peak of the qi-resisting realm, and their auras were vigorous. Obviously, they were the top experts of the outer court. Beside Chen Yan, a student suddenly said, "Senior Chen Yan, I have inquired that Yi Xian and the others are not weak, especially Yi Xian. I heard that he is a swordsman, even Nguesher treats him differently. This time we must not be careless." Chen Yan nodded. "Of course not, Zuoli died because of his carelessness, but it is normal. Not to mention him, even if I met Songlan College students before, I would also look down on them." Saying that, he looked up. "The death of Zuoli and the others is a wake-up call for us." Everyone nodded. Karaki College may look down on Songlan College once, but they would not look down on it a second time. In any case, it was a millennium-old institution, and the students taught by it were not idiots. Before long, Chen Yan's group arrived before Songlan Palace, and there was a little girl washing clothes at the entrance of Songlan Palace. This little girl was naturally Yi Ling. When she saw Chen Yan's group, Yi Ling hastily turned around and ran. She ran to Old Man Ji's courtyard, and Old Man Ji was lying on a chair, and his body was still emitting the pungent smell of alcohol. Yi Ling walked to Old Man Ji's side, and then she lightly pushed him and said anxiously, "Grandpa Ji, wake up, they are coming." Old Man Ji did not move. Meanwhile, Chen Yan's group had arrived at the entrance of Old Man Ji's courtyard, and Yi Ling hurriedly hid behind Old Man Ji when she saw this scene. Chen Yan glanced at Old Man Ji who was lying on the chair, and then he bowed slightly. "This junior is Chen Yan from Kuraki College's outer court, and I have specially come to seek guidance from Songlan College students." Saying that, he looked straight at Old Man Ji and then he said, "Let's fight to the death. A life or death challenge." Currently, the entire imperial capital was looking at Kuraki Academy. If Kuraki Academy couldn't take revenge for Zuoli and the others, then it would undoubtedly affect Kuraki Academy's reputation, and Songlan Academy's reputation would certainly rise. Most importantly, Kuraki College had been suppressing Songlan College for so many years, and they could not afford to make any mistakes in this year's batch, or else their batch would be a disgrace to Kuraki College. At this time, Old Man Ji suddenly said, "In the back mountain go." Chen Yan and the others turned and left. On this day in the back mountain of Songlan, only one student was destined to survive. Chapter 48. In the courtyard behind Old Man Ji, Yi Ling asked softly, "Grandpa Ji, are they in danger?" Old Man Ji stood up and looked at the little girl in front of him with a complicated gaze. She rubbed Yi Ling's head gently. "Don't worry, they'll be fine. Just stay here with Grandpa Ji and don't run around, alright?" Yi Ling nodded obediently. "Grandpa Ji, I'll go cook for you." With that, she turned and ran to the kitchen. Her body was trembling slightly because she was worried about her brother's safety. However, she knew very well that she couldn't go to the back mountain at this time because she couldn't help at all. If she went, she would only cause trouble for her brother. In the kitchen, Yi Ling curled up in a corner and hugged her knees. She didn't cry as she looked at the fire in the stove. At this moment, it was as if she had returned to the Yi family in Qingqing. Back then, when Yi Xian went out during the day, she would wait for Yi Xian for a day. In her world, there was no father, no mother, only her brother. Her brother was her only and everything. In the courtyard, after Yi Ling left, an old man appeared in front of Old Man Ji. The old man wore a linen robe and his beard reached his chest. His hair was combed into a bun and scattered behind his head. He looked very gentle and refined, forming a huge contrast with the drunk Old Man Ji. This person was the dean of Kuraki Academy, Li Xuansong. He was also one of the top experts in Jiang country. Li Xuansong glanced at Old Man Ji and shook his head. "It's been so many years, but you're still the same." Old Man Ji smiled. "You're getting more and more exquisite." Li Xuansong looked around and said, "There's only one academy in Jiang country. I think it's pretty good." Old Man Ji chuckled. "Isn't Kuraki Academy the biggest in Jiang country now?" Li Xuansong looked straight at Old Man Ji. "I know what you want to do with the 3 people you found, but they will end up like the people you found in the past. They will eventually become a corpse on Song Mountain's Xiao Dao." Old Man Ji nodded. "Let's wait and see," Li Xuansong said with a smile. "Then let's wait and see." Back mountain. Mo Yunqi stopped, Bai Zhe climbed out of the waterfall, and Yi Xian stopped blasting the mountain. In front of a dense forest, Yi Xian and the other 2 stood side by side. Yi Xian was in the middle. On his left was Mo Yunqi and on his right was Bai Zhe. Opposite them were Chen Yan and the other Kuraki Academy students. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, "Old Man Ji, let them come up just like that?" Yi Xian looked at Chen Yan and the others in silence. To be honest, although he didn't join Kuraki Academy, he didn't have any enmity or malice towards it. However, there were many times when he couldn't help himself. From the moment he joined Songlan Academy, he was destined to be Kuraki Academy's enemy. Even if he didn't go looking for trouble with the Kuraki students, the students of Kuraki Academy would come looking for him. A feud that could not be resolved with words. However, Yi Xian was never a person who was afraid of trouble. On the contrary, if it was a fight, Yi Xian had never been afraid of anyone in his life. At this moment, Qin Yin suddenly took a step forward. 3 against 3? Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe. Both of them nodded, indicating that there was no problem. 2 men walked out from behind Qin Yin. The man on the left wore a black robe that was exquisite yet not lacking in grandeur. In addition, the man on the right wore a white robe. He had a slender figure, sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a cold appearance as if he was a celestial being. Both of them had an extraordinary bearing. Seeing these 2 people, Yi Xian's expression instantly sank. The feeling of danger. This was his instinctive feeling, and he had always firmly believed in his instincts, because these instincts were trained through countless life and death street battles. The facts proved that Kuraki Academy didn't look down on them anymore. They wouldn't send small fries for them to practice. Yi Xian glanced at Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi. Watch out. Both of them nodded. The white-robed man walked over to stand before Mo Yunqi while the dark-robed man walked over to stand before Bai Zhe. Obviously it was Yi Xian against Qin Yin. Right at this moment, the dark-robed man suddenly vanished on the spot. Bai Zhe's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly crossed his hands before him. Meanwhile, the dark-robed man arrived before him. Bang! Following the sound of an explosion, Bai Zhe was directly pushed back a full 7 to 8 feet. Moreover, there was a deep blood-red handprint on his arms. Right at this moment, the dark-robed man tapped the ground lightly with the tip of his foot, and then he leaped up into the air towards Bai Zhe. He was extremely swift like a hawk pouncing towards its prey. Ascension Realm. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly when he witnessed this scene. This man that wasn't even 20 years old was actually at the Ascension Realm. Such a young genius at the Ascension Realm. In the distance, Bai Zhe's expression changed violently as well. He suddenly squatted down and used his feet to support himself from the ground. At the same time, he pressed his palms together. In an instant, the muscles on his body bulged up while his veins wriggled like fine snakes. It was an extremely shocking sight. Meanwhile, the dark-robed man slapped his palm down from midair. This palm strike was like an enormous axe, and the formidable might and force contained within it instantly tore through the air. Bai Zhe swiftly raised his head, pressed his palms together and formed a seal. Earth and yellow energy surged out from the center of his palm. Obviously it was a martial technique. At the moment that the dark-robed man's palm descended, an ear-piercing explosion instantly resounded. In the blink of an eye, Bai Zhe's figure was blasted over 20 m away. However, the dark-robed man didn't stop. His figure shook, and then he drifted towards Bai Zhe like a gust of wind. On the other side, the white-robed man who stood before Mo Yunqi had suddenly vanished on the spot. Mo Yunqi's expression changed slightly. He tapped the ground lightly with the tip of his foot and glided over 30 m back. However, he just stopped when the white-robed man had arrived above him. The Ascension Realm. Mo Yunqi was shocked in his heart. He didn't dare act carelessly and he retreated repeatedly. At the same time, a flying knife suddenly slashed out from his palm. The white-robed man's figure suddenly flashed in midair, and he dodged the flying knife. Meanwhile, Mo Yunqi was already 30 m away, and he'd pulled open the distance between him and the white-robed man. However, his expression was extremely solemn. The white-robed man didn't waste his breath at all, and he charged towards Mo Yunqi once more. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze from the distance, and his expression was extremely solemn as well, because he noticed that Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi had been suppressed by those 2 people. Obviously they'd investigated Bai Zhe, Mo Yunqi and him before they came here. Yi Xian gazed at Qin Yin, and he had no doubt that Qin Yin was absolutely not an ordinary person. Qin Yin suddenly charged forward, and at the same time 2 rays of cold light shot towards Yi Xian. Dual blades. Yi Xian's reaction was extremely swift, and he'd smashed his fists against Qin Yan's attack at the same time. It was still the crushing fist, and it was the crushing fist that was enhanced with battle intent. At this moment, the trajectory of Qin Yan's dual blades suddenly changed, and his blade sliced towards Yi Xian's wrists at a strange angle. At almost the same time, Yi Xian suddenly spread his arms apart, and then he suddenly kicked towards Qin Yan. His leg was longer than his blades. As soon as Yi Xian launched his kick, Qin Yan immediately pulled back his sabers to defend himself. Bang! Qin Yan retreated a few meters with his blades, and before he could stop, Yi Xian had already charged in front of him, and then he smashed his fist towards Chen Yan again. Crushing fist. He only knew this low-level martial arts technique, but the might of this low-level martial arts technique wasn't weak, and a single punch directly crushed the air. Bang. Chen Yan was forced back once again and Yi Xian pressed forward once more. In an instant Chen Yan was directly suppressed by Yi Xian, suppressed by his fists. At this moment Yi Xian was like a small mountain in front of Chen Yan. The strength of his punches was greater than the previous, and his battle intent was also stronger with each punch. Using force to suppress others. Bang, bang, bang. Chen Yan retreated repeatedly. The current him couldn't even unsheath his saber, and he could only passively defend. His entire body was already enveloped by Yi Xian's force. To be precise, it was fist force. Originally Yi Xian's fists didn't have any force, but after this period of frenzied mountain bombardment, his fists gradually gained their own force. In addition to his battle intent, a low-level human-rank martial arts technique was forcefully beaten into the feeling of a superior-grade spirit-rank martial arts technique. In a certain courtyard. Opposite Old Man Ji, Li Xuanzang retracted his gaze and chuckled. What a great battle intent. He comprehended battle intent at such a young age. Even in the inner court, his foundations are top. What a pity, what a pity. He repeatedly said that it was a pity. This was because this youth was originally going to join their Karaki College. If Yi Xian joined Karaki College, it would naturally be another genius for Karaki College to suck up to. Opposite Li Xuanzang, Old Man Ji was about to speak when Li Xuanzang suddenly said with a smile, "Actually, there's nothing to be pitted about. Not being able to join Karaki College is his loss. Moreover, he's just a genius. We can just kill him." As he spoke, he looked at Old Man Ji. "What do you think?" Old Man Ji glanced at Li Xuanzang. "Geniuses who don't join Karaki College will all end up like this, right?" Li Xuanzang smiled. "If he's not one of us, then he's an enemy." As he spoke, he turned to look at the back mountain. "The three of them are not bad, especially that battle-intent youth Yi Xian. It's a pity that he chose the wrong side." Old Man Ji sneered. "It seems like you guys don't want him." Li Xuanzang's expression gradually turned cold. "I'd rather Karaki College betray everyone in the world, but whoever dares to betray Karaki College will die a horrible death." Conceited? No, to him this was confidence. And Karaki College also had this confidence. Old Man Ji lay on the chair, drinking wine with a smile on his face. Once upon a time, Songlan College was this arrogant. No, it was even more arrogant. But now, in the back mountain the battle was still ongoing. Bang! Along with an explosion, a figure was directly sent flying. This figure was precisely Chen Yan. Yi Xian was about to continue attacking, but at this moment his expression suddenly changed. A sword had silently appeared at the back of his neck. It was a good sword. It was supposed to be a one-on-one duel, but someone suddenly launched a sneak attack. In addition, the sword was extremely fast. Yi Xian couldn't dodge in time and allowed the sword to pierce the back of his neck. In the courtyard, Old Man Ji suddenly stood up. He stared at Li Xuanzang. "You're playing dirty?" Li Xuanzang stood up and smiled. "From today onwards, everyone will only know one outcome for Dao Yi, and that is that all of your Songlan College students will be killed. Everyone will only care about the outcome and not the process. It's over." After saying that, he turned to leave. At this moment, both of them suddenly turned to look at the back mountain. At the back mountain, when the sword pierced the back of Yi Xian's neck, Yi Xian was unharmed. On the contrary, the sword turned into motes of energy and entered Yi Xian's body. The invincible sword body technique used one's body to forge a sword. As long as the sword that injured him wasn't of a higher level than the sword in his body, he would be immune to it and absorb it. The moment the sword energy was absorbed by Yi Xian, a terrifying aura suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. The aura of the qi-controlling realm. P.S. 3 things. First, why does everyone want to block my card? You can block my card for 100 vertical coins. Let me see how many friends you have. Second, for those who haven't bookmarked this book, please bookmark it. That means adding it to your bookshelf. It's also convenient. You'll be able to see it when you go online. Also tickets. Asking for tickets. Chapter 49. How is this possible? In the courtyard, Li Xuanzang stared at the back mountain with a trace of disbelief in his eyes. The sword entered the body, but it was absorbed. Impossible. Could this be the legendary innate sword body? At this point, his pupils suddenly constricted. According to the legends, there were some special physiques, and the innate sword body was one of them. It could swallow swords. People with this kind of physique could be said to be natural swordsmen. And this kind of physique was extremely rare. But once it appeared, it was definitely a heaven-defying existence. At the back mountain. In the instant that Yi Xian broke through to the Qi-controlling realm, he turned around and threw a punch. Compared to before, this punch was at least twice as powerful. This was the benefit of breaking through. Bang! In front of Yi Xian, a figure retreated over 10 feet. At this moment, Yi Xian had a clear look at the person who had launched a sneak attack on him. It was a man in a tight black robe, about 20 years old, with a cold look in his eyes. Obviously he was a sword cultivator. Moreover, he might be a little bit away from reaching the great swordsman. Because at that moment Yi Xian felt a faint sword aura in the sword. The black-robed man stared at Yi Xian. "How could you swallow my sword?" Yi Xian's expression was quite ferocious. "We agreed to fight one-on-one, but you played this kind of trick." As his voice fell, he directly rushed out. At the same time, a sword appeared in his palm. Ling Xiao sword. When Yi Xian reached the Qi-controlling realm, he could already control Qi. Therefore, as soon as the Ling Xiao sword appeared, wisps of sword aura constantly emitted from the sword. Sword aura. The symbol of the great swordsman. All the students of Kuraki Academy were shocked when they witnessed this scene. The black-robed man opposite Yi Xian also had a face full of disbelief. "Great swordsman, you actually reached the great swordsman." Although he was only a short distance away from becoming the great swordsman, this short distance could trap him for 10 or 20 years or even longer. The black-robed man didn't have much time to think because Yi Xian had already arrived in front of him, and Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. As soon as the sword descended, numerous rays of sword light shot out like sharp arrows. The black-robed man's expression changed drastically. He stomped his right foot and used the force from the ground to retreat explosively. However, he was still too slow, and a few strands of sword light directly pierced through his chest. Chi. The black-robed man staggered and fell to the ground, blood spurting out from his chest. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, his expression changed slightly, and he swiftly moved to the side. Meanwhile, a white shadow attacked him. It was the white-clothed man who had just fought with Mo Yunqi. At this moment he obviously wanted to save the black-robed man. Yi Xian was expressionless. Holding the long sword in his hand, he thrust it forward. A strand of sword light flickered at the tip of his sword. The white-clothed man's pupils constricted slightly, and then his hands suddenly trembled violently. A powerful strand of blue energy swept out from within him and formed a blue barrier. However, it wasn't able to stop Yi Xian's attack. Yi Xian's sword sliced through the blue barrier, but it stopped when it was just a few inches away from the center of the white-clothed man's forehead. Because the white-clothed man's hands had clamped down tightly onto Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, a strand of light blue flames emanated from the white-clothed man's hands, and it was exactly these flames that had resisted the sword light emanated by Yi Xian's sword. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pressed forward and kicked the white-clothed man. The white-clothed man reacted extremely quickly, and he immediately let go of Yi Xian's sword and pressed it down. Bang! Yi Xian and the white-clothed man retreated explosively by over 10 m at the same time. Yi Xian had just stopped when Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai arrived on his left and right. At this moment, Bai Zai's upper body was covered in red palm prints, and it was especially so for his chest. It had sunk in severely and it looked rather horrifying. Mo Yunqi wasn't much better off. His entire right arm had been completely fractured and he couldn't move it at all. Moreover, blood was still flowing from the corners of his mouth. Obviously he was heavily injured. As for the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man, they weren't injured at all. At this moment, the gazes of the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man descended onto Yi Xian, and they were about to attack. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly appeared before Yi Xian's group of three. It was Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji had just descended to the ground when Li Xuanzang appeared before him. Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine, and then he looked at Li Xuanzang. "How about this? I'll let you kill these three little fellows. Do you want to kill them?" Li Xuanzang narrowed his eyes. He naturally knew what Old Man Ji meant. If he killed Yi Xian's group of three, then Old Man Ji would definitely fight to the death. And for an expert of Old Man Ji's level, if he acted recklessly, Kuraki College would definitely suffer a heavy blow. Especially if he attacked the younger generation, Kuraki College had no confidence in protecting the younger generation. Such an expert was very difficult to stop. A moment later, Li Xuanzang suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. "You're really surprising, but it doesn't matter. Next year there will definitely be your corpse on Song Mountain Xiaodao. With that, he turned and left with the Kuraki College students. After Li Xuanzang and the others left, Old Man Ji turned to look at Yi Xian's group of three. Do you know who the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man were? Yi Xian's group of three shook their heads. Li Xuanzang said indifferently, they are two of the three great geniuses of Kuraki College's inner courtyard. You should be glad that the other one didn't come today. Otherwise, I would be collecting your corpses right now. Yi Xian's group of three fell silent. Old Man Ji continued, those two just now didn't use their full strength, but the three of you basically did. I let them come up because I want you to see how weak your current strength is compared to Kuraki colleges. Just like what that old fart said, if you don't work hard, your corpses will really be hanging on Song Mountain Xiaodao in a year's time. At that time, the old man won't even be able to collect your corpses. With that, he turned around and left. However, he stopped after a few steps. That's right. Those two just now aren't the best in Kuraki College. The best are Fenju and Beiqin. With your current strength, if you were to face them, you would definitely die. In the field, Yi Xian's group of three fell silent. Their expressions were solemn because they knew that Old Man Ji wasn't trying to scare them. They had already seen the strength of the white-clothed man and the black-clothed man. Very terrifying. Even Yi Xian, who had already reached the qi-resisting realm, didn't have the confidence to say that he would definitely be able to defeat them unless he used one sword to decide life and death. And those two weren't even the strongest in Kuraki College. A sense of crisis. This time all three of them felt a sense of danger. Before this, the three of them were carefree. Even when they cultivated, they were forced to cultivate by Old Man Ji. There were very few voluntary parts. But now, the three of them were very clear that if they didn't become stronger, their corpses would definitely be hung on the road in the future. Even Yi Xian felt danger. No matter what happened in the past, he had to admit that he was now a student of Zhonglan College. He had to bear the grudges between Zhonglan College and Kuraki College even if he didn't want to. Moreover, when Old Man Ji saved his sister, he also promised Old Man Ji that he would do his best to fight against Kuraki College and bring back the corpses from Xiaodao. Cultivate. The three of them silently left the field and began to cultivate on their own. Yi Xian was still blasting the mountain. After the battle just now, he had some enlightenment. This time he wasn't just blasting the mountain. After adding battle intent, he tried to make his fists have momentum. Fist momentum. This was definitely the reason why Old Man Ji wanted him to blast the mountain. Punch, punch, punch. Punch, punch, punch. The momentum of one punch could split the earth and shatter the mountain. After understanding this, the power and momentum of Yi Xian's punches became stronger and stronger. Of course, he also paid the price. Both of his hands were already badly mutilated. At night, Yi Xian was exhausted and sprawled out in front of the small mountain. He lay on the ground and looked at the stars in the sky, gasping for breath. Now he didn't just feel tired, he also felt good. Extremely good. He felt that after venting out all the energy in his body, the feeling was extremely satisfying. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly sat up. He opened his palm and a sword floated in his palm. Ling Xiao sword. At this moment, Ling Xiao sword was a little different than before. He couldn't describe this difference, he could only feel it. According to his guess, it should be because he had devoured that sword before. That sword's level wasn't low, it should be a spirit sword. Of course, it was definitely not as good as this Ling Xiao sword. Otherwise, that sword would have directly taken his life. The core of his invincible sword body was the sword. The stronger the sword in his dantian, the stronger his cultivation technique would be, and he could use this cultivation technique to devour even more swords. Sword. Thinking of this, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something. He scanned his surroundings and seeing that there was no one around, he immediately entered the prison pagoda. In the endless starry sky, Yi Xian stood under the pagoda. He raised his head and looked at the top of the pagoda. At the top of it there were three swords. From his angle he could only roughly see the three swords. He wanted to take a closer look, but it was a pity that he hadn't reached the airborne realm and could fly in the air. Therefore he could only look from afar. Looking at the three swords, Yi Xian's eyes were burning. His intuition told him that if he could use these three swords as his dantian, there wouldn't be any sword in the world that he couldn't absorb. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly trembled. Yi Xian was stunned, then hurriedly entered the first level. He looked around. Senior? The mysterious woman didn't answer. Yi Xian frowned. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly raised his head. There was a moment of silence. Thump. Above Yi Xian's head, footsteps could be heard. When he heard the footsteps, Yi Xian was stunned. At first he thought that he had heard wrongly, but very quickly, thump 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 thump, the footsteps on the second level were getting louder and louder. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Who? No one answered, but the footsteps were getting louder and louder. In the end, the entire first level of the prison pagoda shook. Chapter 50. Panic. At this moment Yi Xian was panicking. This was because the mysterious woman had told him that the second level was not a kind person. Since it was not a kind person, it would be very difficult to communicate with them. This meant that once they came out, they would not give him a chance to speak. Senior? Yi Xian took 2 steps back and looked around. Senior? Are you still there? The mysterious woman still did not reply. Yi Xian was prepared to escape. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly trembled. Soon, the footsteps stopped and the entrance to the second level returned to normal. Yi Xian was stunned and hurriedly asked, Senior? Did you attack? Still no one replied. Yi Xian wanted to ask something else, but at this moment, a white piece of paper suddenly floated out from the entrance to the second level. Paper. Yi Xian was stunned. Then he took 2 steps forward. At this moment, the piece of paper floated in front of him. There was a smiley face on the paper. Below the smiley face were 2 paw prints which looked like cat paws. Yi Xian. At this moment, another piece of paper floated out from the entrance to the second level and slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. This time there was a wronged face on the paper, and below the face there were also 2 small paw prints. Suddenly, another piece of paper floated out. Soon it floated in front of Yi Xian. This time there was a crying face on the paper, and below the crying face there were also 2 small paw prints. Yi Xian looked up at the second level. Do you want me to let you out? Just as he said this, there was a soft sound from the top of the tower. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. That I can't let you out for now. After a moment of silence, suddenly, boom! The entire first and second levels of the prison pagoda violently shook, and the powerful impact instantly sent Yi Xian flying. Bang! Yi Xian crashed into the wall of the pagoda and howled in pain. At this moment, he felt as if his limbs were about to fall apart. However, before he could get up, an evil aura suddenly appeared on the first level. This aura was so evil that it caused Yi Xian's expression to change greatly. He hurriedly retreated out of the tower. Just as the aura was about to spill out of the tower, a sword in the sky above the world prison tower suddenly trembled slightly. Boom! The evil aura was instantly shattered, and the prison pagoda returned to normal. After a while, Yi Xian saw that the world prison pagoda had calmed down. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Not daring to stay any longer, he hurriedly left the prison pagoda. In reality, Yi Xian took a deep breath. Find the Tao Law. Only at this moment did he truly realize how terrifying this world prison pagoda was. This was only the 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. Just what kind of people were imprisoned here? He had to find the Tao Laws. After Yi Xian calmed down, he washed up and returned to his courtyard. At the entrance of the courtyard, he saw a petite figure sitting in front of the stone steps. Was Yi Ling. Just like before, no matter how long he went out, when he returned, he would see his little sister Yi Ling waiting for him. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling was already asleep. He gently picked up Yi Ling. At this moment, Yi Ling subconsciously hugged him tightly, burying her head in his chest. Brother? Yi Xian smiled, then carried Yi Ling back to her room. After covering Yi Ling with a blanket, Yi Xian left the room. Not far away from the room, Old Man Ji had appeared at the entrance. Old Man Ji said, "Come with me." After saying that, he turned and walked outside. Yi Xian followed. On the way, Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine and said, "The matter with Karaki Academy has temporarily come to an end. However, when you leave the mountain in the future, you should be careful. Right now, there is a lot of resentment in Karaki Academy. They all want revenge, but it has been suppressed by Karaki Academy. Of course, they don't want to stop. They are waiting for Fenju and Beichin to return." "They are not at Karaki Academy?" Yi Xian asked. Old Man Ji said indifferently, "If they were at Karaki Academy, the ones who came to challenge you that day wouldn't have been those 3 geniuses. Karaki Academy doesn't act, but once they do, they will definitely kill." Yi Xian fell silent. Old Man Ji said again, "With me here, Karaki Academy won't dare to send experts to assassinate you, but that is not absolute. So, when you are outside, you must be careful. Don't be careless and get yourself killed." Yi Xian nodded, "Understood." Old Man Ji suddenly stopped. "There's still half a month before you go to Two World Mountain, right?" Yi Xian looked at Old Man Ji. Does the dean know? Old Man Ji nodded. In the country of Jiang, there are only 2 or 3 people who are qualified. It seems that Enlace really thinks highly of you since she gave it to you. Yi Xian didn't say anything. Old Man Ji hesitated for a moment, then said, Kid, you're not an ordinary person, but that Enlace is even more so. Kuraki Academy is so domineering, but Enlancio said she wouldn't join, and Kuraki Academy didn't even dare to fart. From this, you should be able to see how terrifying she is. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, what are you trying to say? Old Man Ji said indifferently, You know very well what I'm trying to say. Yi Xian smiled. The dean is afraid that I will bring trouble to myself if I get close to her, right? Old Man Ji nodded. Enlace doesn't have any ill intentions towards you, but that might not be the case for the people behind her. It's best to stay away from her, or wait until you have absolute strength before approaching her. It's good for you and for her. Yi Xian shook his head. Old Man Ji looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian said softly, We know each other and we're friends. We don't mix in anything else. Old Man Ji shook his head. You're too idealistic. You don't mix in with her, but don't tell me others don't mix in as well? Or do you think that the world is a beautiful place and that everyone is reasonable? Yi Xian shrugged. If her family tries to stop me, I'll fight them. I'll beat them until they don't dare to stop me. Old Man Ji gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. You've got guts, but unfortunately that's all. Yi Xian was a little speechless. What else can I do? I'll tell Miss An that I'm afraid of her family, and we can't be friends anymore? Old Man Ji looked straight at Yi Xian. Do you really only want to be friends with her, kid? Don't you have other thoughts? Yi Xian blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. With that, he walked into the distance. Old Man Ji sighed and took a step forward. This step brought him to Yi Xian's side and he said, This is your choice, I won't say anything more. Finally, when you go to the Two-World Mountain, you need to be careful of 3 things. The first is obviously Kuraki Academy. The 2 wretched geniuses and 3 prodigies of Kuraki Academy might go. If you come across them, don't try to be brave. You still need to run. The second is to be careful of the people from the Tang Empire. The Tang Empire will definitely send people there as well. The relationship between our Jiang Empire and the Tang Empire is like the relationship between Kuraki Academy and our Tsanglan Academy. With that, he paused and continued, Third, you have to be careful of some geniuses from other countries. When you're outside, killing and robbing others is a common occurrence. You have to know that many geniuses rose up by stepping on the corpses of other geniuses. I know you've been fighting and killing since you were young, but the law of survival is even crueler in the outside world. Yi Xian nodded. I'll keep that in mind. Old Man Ji took a sip of wine and continued, The fire spirit in your sister's body is being devoured, and it won't last long. When we go to the Sword Master's abode, it's located in a volcanic region. If there's a chance, find some fire-attributed items, the hotter the better. Yi Xian bowed slightly. My sister is here, so I'll have to trouble you, Principal. Don't worry, she's safe here, Old Man Ji said. He then stopped. Before you go to Two-World Mountain, you have to cultivate your fist force. Your force is still not enough. Fist force, fist force, fist force. Before you punch, your aura has already been released. That's the true fist force. As for your own battle intent, don't be too hasty. There's still a process between you and a Martial Dao Grandmaster, and this process needs to be completed slowly. Martial Dao can't be rushed. It's best if everything comes naturally. Yi Xian bowed deeply to Old Man Ji. I've learned a lot. Old Man Ji nodded. Go back and cultivate. Cultivating fist force will be of great help to you when you go to Two-World Mountain. Yi Xian bowed again, then turned around and left. Looking at Yi Xian's departing figure, Old Man Ji said softly, He's not in a rush. He's a good seedling. After saying that, he gulped down a mouthful of wine, then turned around and disappeared into the distance. At the back of the mountain, Yi Xian arrived in front of the small mountain again, and very soon, there was a series of rumbling sounds coming from the back of the mountain. Under the waterfall, Bei Zhe was crazily swimming against the flow of the waterfall. Within the mountain, Mo Yunqi was madly fleeing, and this time, it wasn't just one demon wolf chasing him, but 2. Bitter cultivation. After fighting with the students from Kuraki Academy, Yi Xian and the other 2 began to cultivate crazily. This was because the 3 of them had seen the strength of the students from Kuraki Academy, and in the future they would definitely have to face them. No one wanted to lose, nor did they want to die. Cultivation. Madly cultivating. In the following period of time, Yi Xian and the other 2 began to cultivate crazily. Apart from eating and sleeping, the 3 of them spent all their time cultivating. This was especially so for Mo Yunchi and Beize. When the two of them had fought with the students from Karaki Academy, they had been completely suppressed by the other party, and they had not been able to fight back. The two of them were proud people, and they did not want something like that to happen again. Half a month later. Under the bitter cultivation there were naturally some results. Mo Yunchi could already deal with the attacks of the two demon wolves with ease, and he could even release flying knives to counterattack at any time. As for Beize, under the waterfall he no longer needed the chains and he could swim against the flow of the waterfall. His body had gone through a huge change compared to before, and it was not just his body, but his strength had also changed greatly. As for Yi Xian, in front of the small mountain, Yi Xian's eyes slightly changed, and his whole body was like a statue. After an unknown amount of time, his eyes suddenly opened, and his right hand clenched into a fist. Boom. A formless power swept out from his body. In the distance, bang. A huge rock that was several zhang wide suddenly shattered. Power. Fist power. At this time Yi Xian suddenly fiercely punched the ground. Boom. With Yi Xian as the center, the ground within a radius of several zhang instantly exploded, and countless gravel shot out in all directions like sharp arrows. Yi Xian stood up, and he looked at his own fist, and his eyes were filled with excitement. I'm really King powerful. At this time there was a sudden change in the field. Pa. With a loud slap, Yi Xian's whole body directly flew to the mountain wall several zhang away. Bang. The mountain wall trembled slightly, and countless gravel fell along with Yi Xian. After a moment Yi Xian slowly got up, and at this time, there was a small claw mark on the right side of his face. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.